August City Council meeting, and we will start with a Foundry update from our city manager.
Great, and as always, these are available on our city website. You can catch these as well as previous ones.
Excuse me, I just was wondering, should we do a Pledge of Allegiance, or do we already do that?
We've already done that, sir, and
Okay.
we've already done roll call. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The first update is from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the New York State DEC, the remedial design updates. Design drawings were completed for 4 properties on Goodell Terrace that New York State DEC anticipates will be cleaned up during 2021. Remedial designs are in progress for Genesee Park and for 2 properties on the west side of Genesee Street opposite the park. New York State DEC's contractors will meet with city officials later this week to review plans for the park. New York State DEC anticipates cleanup activities will be performed at these properties beginning later this year. New York State DEC's contractors met with the owners of 4 properties on the east side of Wadsworth Street, north of Pepsi Lane. New York State DEC anticipates cleanup activities will be performed at these properties beginning in September or October. Soil sampling will be conducted from mid to late August at 28 properties along Exchange, Wadsworth, and Middle Streets. For their remedial construction updates, New York State DEC's contractor conducted additional restoration activities at properties along the east side of Genesee Street, north of Genesee Park, and at the Genesee Park Place properties. Excavation and backfilling activities were completed at 2 properties on the north side of Lewis Street. Restoration activities have begun at these properties. And excavation and backfilling activities will be conducted at additional properties along the north side of Lewis Street during the month of August. Landscaping items were installed at additional properties on Genesee Street and Lafayette Avenue that were remediated in 2019. Additional properties will be completed this month. For the City Foundry site remediation, that restoration and remediation is complete, and the additional releveling of the area or any overgrowth or maintenance will be monitored and handled. For resident outreach, Food Link Curbside's mobile market for fresh vegetables and fruits is operating with the strict COVID-19 guidelines at the following times and locations. The Salvation Army from 11:15 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., and this is on Fridays. Elmcrest Apartments, 3:15 p.m. to 4:15 p.m., and Seneca Street Apartments from 1:45 p.m. to 2:45 p.m. And this is available to all residents for going to curbside, and the voucher program is for residents waiting for remediation. The Farmers Market voucher program is available at the Wednesday market from 3 to 7 p.m., which is a change in time this year. And the voucher program for the dog park is available again for residents waiting for remediation. And Jessica Avila is available for residents and can be contacted, and I'll list her information, at gnrc@geneva.ny.us or 315-759-7354. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I was muted. Fortunately, my right-hand man took care of me. So this next section of the meeting is for Ontario County Supervisor update, and I'd like to welcome Ontario County Supervisor Greg Benswitz.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to come in again and do another supervisor update. Glad to do it. Just so you know, okay, my name has changed on there. It was under my daughter's account, but I see Adam took care of it for me. All right. We're going to start off today with the most important thing that's going on recently, and that's the COVID update and the COVID numbers. It's certainly affected everybody personally and most definitely financially within our jurisdictions. So I'll start out. Our COVID update for today. Today was the first day since March that we've had more than 2 new diagnoses in one day. We had 3 today. There are currently 7 active in isolation that are being monitored by public health staff. We have 33 cases in mandatory quarantine that had contact with positive cases and are being monitored and contacted daily as well. We have 2 county residents who are currently hospitalized, the lowest we have had since the end of March. One is expected to be released very soon. We officially have more cases in the 18 to 29 age category than any other category. 57 individual cases total. 30 to 39-year-olds, there are currently there's been 51 cases. 40 to 49, there's been 39 cases. 50 to 59, there has been 54 cases. And 60 to 69, 55. So you've seen an increase in some of the diagnosis and cases, positive tests in some of the younger age groups over the last few weeks. 476 people are in precautionary quarantine as a result of traveling, and these individuals are contact traced by the state system. So there are 35 states listed. As you know, Rhode Island was added today, and this will be updated every Tuesday. And of course, mask, social distancing, and common sense in public are making a difference. So that's our COVID update for August 5th. Moving forward, just one note, on September 10th, the Ontario County Board of Supervisors will have a small ribbon cutting ceremony prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting for the newly renovated 74 Ontario Street, which will be the new home of the Ontario County Board of Supervisors, the Sheriff's Department, Board of Elections, will be conducted there as well, which is where the old jail is, and that's all the construction many people may have seen as you're going into Canandaigua on Ontario Street. The next important thing I wanted to bring up was the census and census reporting for Ontario County. As we know, the census helps quite a bit with funding. It helps with school lunches and a lot of other funding that goes to municipalities. Right now, we are showing Ontario County has a response rate, a total response rate of only 56.4%. The good news out of that is that in the city of Geneva, which has 4 tracks for census tracking, the city of Geneva actually has 2 of their tracks have the highest response rate of anywhere in the county at 75.2% in one section and 49.5% in another section, or 53% in another section, I'm sorry. So this is a push week, and it's a statewide effort to push census self-response in advance of door-to-door efforts that we will begin later in August regarding the census. So it's important that we get this done, and we tell all of our constituents to please get those census surveys in because they're crucial for local government. Ontario County Planning Department 2020 Census Outreach activities in and around the city of Geneva include posting English and Spanish flyers as allowed at grocery stores, hardware stores, gas stations, apartment complexes, and Hispanic-themed restaurants and shops on June 1st and 2nd, and 2020 Census sandwich boards display at Geneva Food Distribution that was there on June 8th. Ontario County Economic Development is asking their 300 business contacts to remind employees to respond to the 2020 census. The deadline had passed, but I know there's an extension. Obviously, everything's going on with COVID, but that's just something that's crucial to everybody in the city of Geneva as well as Ontario County. Sales tax update and trends and outlook. As it's expected, sales tax revenues have been down, and they are down between 18 and 20% in 2020 as compared to the same second quarter taxes in 2019. The largest hit sectors are, of course, New York State restaurants and other eating establishments, which are down about 57 to 58%. And the hardest hit are the traveler accommodations. And in the Finger Lakes, since tourism is such a big deal, that's a major effect, and that's down 73% from the same time last year. Internet sales tax has not provided the boost in revenues we had originally hoped for, but they're only accounting for about 1.8 million in new sales tax to Ontario County over the last year. In analyzing that most recent quarter, we are seeing this year's revenue lower than average for the same quarter over the last 10 years. And the 10-year average for this time of year would be $785,000. And this year's revenue for second quarter was only $710,000. So as everything when it comes to sales tax revenue, we're down across the board, but that gives everybody an idea of exactly how much. Next, I want to touch on sustainability and solid waste updates for Geneva area residents, and they're encouraged to check the county website at ontariocountyrecycles.org for more information on the upcoming special collections. So they're going to have certain things like residential tire collection in the town of Naples coming up August 13th. Hazardous waste, home hazardous waste is coming up in Farmington September 12th. And then there'll be a confidential paper shredding October 9th at the County Transportation Center. But there are more dates and locations, and you can check the county website for that. So I'm not going to take any more of your time there. They did want me to add that backyard composting. County kicked off a backyard composting program for county residents in July. The program enables these residents to buy the equipment they need to become successful backyard composters at a reduced rate. The first wave of 300 units sold out in 2 weeks, and the next opening for purchases will begin the first week of September. Going to move on to the next topic is landfill updates. I'll go through this quickly as I can here. Gas collection and construction. The bulk of the gas construction work is completed, and as a result, the site has experienced an increase in gas flow collected and a decrease in fugitive odors and associated off-site complaints. Casella will continue to monitor the hydrogen sulfide emissions utilizing both permanent and handheld meters, and they are working to design plans for a permanent cap that will be constructed on the 5 acres of the eastern slope along County Road 5 next summer. So you'll see that work being done. Okay, and it is expected the DEC will move forward with issuing a consent order for any off-site emissions associated odors experienced over the past year. Okay, leachate. Casella received New York City DEC approval to install subsurface aerators in the leachate storage lagoons, and that will be eliminating hydrogen sulfide odors experienced by the storage lagoons. They're also currently estimated that the work will be completed within 2 to 3 weeks. So if you have any questions from constituents on that, that's kind of what's going on, and you can always call me or contact planning department. The installation of the approved system will cause an increase in odor for the immediate 72 hours after operation begins. That odor should only be experienced in the immediate facility of the storage lagoons as you're driving west of the manor on State Routes 5 and 20. Stormwater work. The site has a lot of work to do on stabilizing the east slope after all the construction efforts they've been doing with the gas. There's approximately 11 acres that were impacted when the horizontal gas collectors were installed. In the coming weeks, those driving by the landfill can expect to see the earthwork, grading, and seeding along that portion of the site. So that's going to be it for landfill. Next, I'd like to get into some shared services items. And currently, sure. The only shared services items that have really been going on recently have been related to law enforcement, and in this case with the Sheriff's Department and the City of Geneva Police Department. The ongoing shared services agreements or shared services items have been something similar to our 14-hour barricaded subject standoff on North Genesee Street a couple of weeks ago. In addition to Ontario County regularly providing hostage negotiation services, crime scene assistance, and other interagency assistance that's regularly done between the agencies. Lastly, I'd like to finish up with just a sheriff's report, and this is certainly relevant to this evening, especially after your public meeting. With regard to the City of Geneva, let's grab this for you. So the Ontario County Sheriff's Department, just in analyzing their information with regard to jail data and inmate days, we've seen that the City of Geneva Police Department alone accounts for about 16% of overall inmate days in occupation of the county jail. There's been about 1,742 inmate days since the beginning of the year. And that includes Geneva PD out of all the agencies, which would be Geneva, City of Canandaigua, Ontario County Sheriffs, State Police, State Park Police, all the other agencies, parole, probation. So we do take up a good deal of that, even with the current changes in bail reform. So that's gone on. The Sheriff's Department is currently having their own staffing and budgetary issues, which we know everybody's had. The Road Patrol is currently down 3 full-time and 1 part-time officer. The jail is down 4 full-time and 1 part-time deputy. And retirements projected before the end of the year so far within the Sheriff's Department are 9 total, with 3 additional from communications. And their retirement incentive program and their filing date has not ended yet, so that could increase. So more retirements may be possible. And just as a side note, the Ontario County Sheriff's Department so far this year, as of August 1st, has assisted the Geneva Police Department on 265 different calls for service within the city. So Ontario County is facing, as you know, its own manpower and budget shortfalls. And therefore, with regard to the city of Geneva, considering any personnel and overtime cuts or reduction in funding or reduction in police coverage, the sheriffs would just like to say, with the increases in call volume, support for CMAC and anticipated increase in concerts in the future, contractual obligations with various towns for enhanced traffic, court security details, as well as many other challenges and anticipated reductions in staffing, my office cannot be looked upon to supplement the Geneva Police Department. I am happy to provide assistance when requested, but I do not have the manpower to be a primary for the city due to police department reductions in staffing. We know that, as a retired police officer here in Geneva and working with the county and those agencies, they work very well together. And the county is always very happy to assist the City of Geneva Police Department in any needs we have. But in the future, these needs will be less and less, or the resources will be less and less, so will the money. So I think that's relevant given tonight's public hearing, and they just wanted to make sure that was part of that address tonight to City Council. So at this point, I'm going to be done with my presentation. I'm not going to take any questions for the sake of brevity, but if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me or any department heads in the Ontario County Board of Supervisors. If you have anything at all, just give me a call. Feel free to contact me. And thank you again for allowing me to come and do the update. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda, we have the consideration of meeting minutes from June 29th and July 1st, and I'd like a motion. There you go, Councilor Pruitt, second by Councilor Noon. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Pruitt,
Aye.
Councilor Noon,
Aye.
Councilor Galanese,
Aye.
Councilor Burrell,
Aye.
Councilor Peeler,
Aye.
Councilor Regan,
Aye.
Councilor Camera,
Aye.
Councilor Salamandra,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is 3 minutes. We have 31 people signed up for public comment. I'm going to hold you to the 3 minutes. I've heard from the previous public input that they didn't get the information, so I'm telling you now, before we start the public comment, if you're over 3 minutes, please work on condensing. I don't want to be the guy that stifles you, but work on condensing your statement to within that 3 minutes. I would greatly appreciate it. That would be very helpful. It'll stop me from having to hit the mute button and stop you at the 3 minute mark. So first on our agenda is Mr. Daniel Hennessy.
Yeah. Hi, Steve. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Dan.
Good. I just want to make a comment that leads back to the public forum, if I may.
Please.
The words white supremacy were mentioned by a few individuals who are against having a PAB. I want someone to just speak out and define what white supremacy is, as defined by an organization I've participated with in educational efforts regarding the Holocaust in the past. Once even having hosted a presentation, Hate on the Internet, at HWS back in 2012, which required, ironically, extra police protection due to his exposition on white supremacism activity in the US. That's the Anti-Defamation League. The definition by the Anti-Defamation League of white supremacy is a term used to characterize various belief systems, central to which are one or more of the following key tenets. 1, whites should have dominance over people of other backgrounds, especially where they may coexist. 2, whites should live by themselves in a white-only society. 3, white people have their own culture that is superior to other cultures. 4, white people are genetically superior to other people. As a full-fledged ideology, white supremacy is far more encompassing than simple racism or bigotry. Most white supremacists today further believe that the white race is in danger of extinction due to a rising flood of non-whites who are controlled and manipulated by Jews, and that imminent action is needed to save the white race. I just want to say that, Mayor, I take offense at the insinuation that to disagree with the need for a PAB here in Geneva is somehow associated with or tantamount to advocating for white supremacism or being part of the white supremacist movement. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next on our agenda is Erica Van Savage.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Erica Van Savage. For those of you who didn't hear me speak during the public forum, I am the wife of a Geneva police officer and a Geneva native. On behalf of the families of the Geneva Police Department, I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank all of those who have continued to remind us of their support, trust, and love for the men and women of the Geneva Police Department over the past few months. Every call, every message, every card, and every meal has been appreciated more than you guys could ever imagine. I truly mean that. I want to tell any officer watching this tonight to hold your head high. You are loved, and your sacrifices are appreciated by people. Genevans are known for their support and their love for one another, especially during hard times. And these are some hard times, guys. But I have faith in the city of Geneva, and I know that we will fearlessly face any challenge together and emerge victoriously with a strengthened Black and red bond. That is what Geneva has always done, and that is what Geneva will always do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be L'Oreal Wolkers. City Clerk will read. Thank you.
Yep, L'Oreal says, I am the girlfriend of Steve Vine, a detective with the Geneva Police Department. I am not a city resident, but through Steve's employment, I have developed a great love for the city and the people in it. My loved one has dedicated his life to serving the city of Geneva, and I ask that you hear my concerns and listen with an open and understanding heart. I am not pleased to hear about the actions and behaviors of a certain council person. Sorry.
On the fly editing, I appreciate your efforts.
She says she will not sit back and watch the city of Geneva, where her loved one risks his life every day, be represented by councilors who do not respect the city and the people of our city. Enough is enough. I ask you to listen, really listen, and everyone take care of the problem. Please don't let actions of any single council person go undisciplined. Provocation and incitement of violence needs to end. Actions unbecoming of an elected official reflect poorly on those that tolerate or condone it. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Clerk, for doing that. Next is Kelly Crawford. The City Clerk will read. We're keeping you busy tonight. I hope they're paying you for this.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for granting my request to address City Council. My name is Kelly Crawford, and I've been a Geneva resident for over 40 years. I spoke at the February City Council meeting in regards to a specific council member's behavior and the refusal to stand for the pledge. Okay. So she was informed that she would receive a formal response to her concern, and to date, she has not been contacted by any member of City Council regarding resolution of this issue. Recently, Geneva City Council voted in favor of a public hearing with regard to forming a police accountability board. I am not here to debate this decision, but it does beg the question, shouldn't City Council members be held to a similar standard? This particular council, okay.
Thank you, Lori.
She's not in favor of councilors posting inflammatory comments encouraging people to burn the police department or defund the police department. Sorry.
You're all right. You're doing a great job.
City Council's seemingly lack of interest regarding any threatening or irresponsible behavior leads her to assume that council condones it. If, however, councilors believe that these actions are a direct threat to our community, especially to those who protect us, we need to know what specific actions we will take to resolve this issue. You must know at present that your silence speaks volumes to the majority of Geneva City taxpayers. Make no mistake, the silent majority do not want this type of dangerous representation of our community. Your action or inaction will have an impact on all of us, and we will remember your decision on Election Day.
Thank you very much. Next is Geza Rezdina, and the city clerk will read that.
Giza says, please do not bring a marina to the Geneva lakefront. There are 3 marinas that are not fully occupied, and the occupancy rate seems to go down. It would add an additional burden to the city's finances and would not be a source of income. There are 3 additional marinas down the Cayuga-Seneca Canal with the same problem. Instead of a questionable marina, the city should be looking into a water fountain of 70 to 75 feet high that would be visible from far to all, would bring people to the lakeshore and let them linger, as this has been suggested also by Dan McGowan. I suspect that it would be a lot cheaper than a marina, including the operation costs.
Thank you. Next is Jess Farrell.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. I carefully crafted my speech to accord with the rules I received, that my remarks, quote, be addressed to the city council as a whole and not any individual member. And then on the fly, I edited according to the rules as they were enforced in the last session. So I respectfully request that I not be interrupted until I finish. It is much shorter, Mayor, I promise.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Quote, the college did their whole thing for police accountability. If I could have got a gun and shot the squares on my computer screen and killed everybody, it's disgusting. My name is Jess Farrell. This right here, I'd like you to all look, that's my square that day. And a certain city councilor wishes that they could have got a gun, shot this square, and killed me. I'll let that sink in for a second. I know that I don't see eye to eye with all counselors about all things. And yet, even knowing this, I intentionally reach out to respectfully engage with them as I advocate for police reform in Geneva. And I've received respectful feedback back. Now, believe me, I am not so deluded as to think that I'm changing their minds. But before this weekend, I was deluded enough to trust that as I was being respectful to them, that they would be respectful back to me. So imagine the gut punch I received when I saw the video from the rally. Now, you might be tempted to say that I'm overreacting. Words aren't actions, after all. I am here to speak to you. Well, I'd like you to imagine being in my shoes. And in fact, some of you are in my shoes, as you two were on the call. But for those of you who weren't, I'll set the stage. You find out that someone has publicly expressed a desire to shoot up an event that you attended with your spouse, your colleagues, your friends. Do you trust that person ever again? In this day and age where we have a ridiculous number of mass shootings, do you trust a person that not only expressed a vague desire to shoot something up, but has said with detail that they wished that they could take a gun and shoot and kill you and your spouse and your colleagues and your friends? Now, you might be tempted to still say, but come on now, I know this counselor, and they would never actually shoot somebody. Well, my response to that is twofold. One, plenty of people who commit mass shootings come as a surprise to even those who knew them best. But beyond that, I would say that this is not just an average citizen saying something. City councilors are held to a higher standard. And here's the thing. When one person expresses something, it makes others who might be thinking that way too believe that their feelings have been validated, that it's normal. And particularly when the person expressing it is someone in power, which is the case here. I've been reading the comments posted online, and I found this. In an exchange, one person asked another how they felt about a counselor saying that they wanted to kill people. And the response was, quote, personally, I think it's great he felt that way. Why? So we're already seeing it. Other people being empowered by hearing a counselor say it and voicing it themselves. How long before one of them decides it's okay to act on it too? Because the thing is, we're not just advocating for police accountability in online forums. We are protesting outside the police department and marching through the streets of Geneva. Now that this admission that a city councilor was so angered by a virtual event that they felt a murderous rage, an event that only existed online and wasn't even inconveniencing anybody, am I supposed to believe that these daydreams of shooting me are reserved for when I'm sitting here behind my computer? No. When I'm marching through the city where I live and I work, I know that my city council has made it more acceptable for others to at least dream about aiming a gun at me and shooting to kill. As long as the current composition of the council stands, as a Geneva resident, if I want to engage with my city government, I will have to reach out to somebody I know wants to murder me specifically, not some general threat for some other people for different stances on an issue. Murder me personally. There were about 80 Geneva residents on that call, but many more who support the creation of a police accountability board who were not on Zoom that day. All of them know that a certain council member wishes that they could kill them so that they wouldn't have to pretend to listen to their squawking anymore. To my city councilors, as you sit there and decide whether there is anything that this council should do about another councilor's actions, I want you to think about how I started my call tonight. Each one of these squares is a person like me who had to call their mother this weekend and say, Mom, I just want to warn you that when you go on Facebook today, you're going to see a video of a city councilor saying he wanted to shoot me and kill me. A person like me whose sister told them with fear in her eyes that she didn't want them to speak at public comment and become more of a target. These people are your constituents. They are scared, they are angry, and they deserve your support. Please censure your colleague for his comments and join me in requesting his resignation immediately tonight. Thank you.
Jessica, thank you for modifying your comments. I appreciate that. Next is Michael Mills, and the city clerk will read.
Mayor Valentino and members of Geneva City Council, the following letter is formal correspondence from the Geneva Business Improvement District regarding the future of the Seneca Lake Marina waterfront project that has been in the works for a number of years and is set to be discussed at one of your future meetings. The Geneva Bid Board of Directors took up the issue at our most recent meeting, July 27, 2020, and voted unanimously to share the following statement supporting completion of the proposed marina development plans as it is currently envisioned. The City of Geneva staff, council, and citizens work on this project, which is funded and is about to go out for contract bids as we understand it. For more than a decade, the Geneva bid supported continued progress on a critical investment that will further connect the Seneca Lake waterfront to the downtown properties and businesses. The New York State Downtown Reinvestment Initiative grant will take significant strides toward making residents and visitors movement toward the waterfront and our city center easier and more inviting. The proposed marina will complement this work and provide further reason for people to visit downtown. The Geneva Bid Board of Directors hopes that you will continue the Seneca Lake Waterfront Marina project as currently envisioned. Thanks for your consideration in advance. Michael Mills.
Thank you. Next is Virgil Slade.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Slade.
Thank you. Good evening to the City Council. A councillor recently said at a teaching that he participated in, which I helped to organize, that, quote, the college did their whole thing for police accountability. If I could have got a gun and shot the squares on my computer screen and killed everybody, it's disgusting. My name is Virgil Slade. This is my square on that particular day. At your meeting on Monday, Mr. Mayor, you expressed your appreciation of flow charts. So what I want to do is I want to show you what this flow chart would look like if the councillor's murderous daydreams were to become a reality. That's everybody cancelled out there, Mr. Mayor. I want to let that sink in for a couple of seconds. My wife is Jess Farrell, and you've heard how she has spoken. You have heard how this has affected our families. We moved to Geneva a little more than 2 years ago, so we are still learning the local customs. Is this the local customs of councillors on the Geneva City Council? That they, when they hear things that they don't like, that they threaten to kill 80-odd people, or at least they daydream about doing so? From what I can gather, or from what we can gather, in times of strife, people in Geneva recall the lessons that they have learned from their grandparents. And well, at least that is one of the things I have learned from the councillor's apology, to what he called Genevians. I understand the faux pas completely. I understand it entirely. If I was concentrating so hard to get my Back the Blue bracelet into the video shot, I would probably also have forgotten the proper way to address my constituents. But I digress. In keeping with this Genevan, please notice Genevan tradition, I want to share some of the wisdom that was bestowed upon me by my grandmother, an intelligent, strong woman of color. I think that some of this wisdom could stand the city council in good stead as you navigate this historic time in the history of the city. I was what I will euphemistically call a spirited child, which meant that my granny had to speak to me often. One of the first lessons I remember her imparting onto me was to trust my eyes and ears. I had a propensity for befriending kids who often got into trouble, but I always tried to justify their behavior, even at the cost of being blinded to who and what they really are. You heard and you saw the comments of your fellow councillor. You know his agenda. Do not doubt your eyes and ears in dealing with him. I want to say the same thing to the entire city. While I can neither confirm nor deny this, there were some who thought that I was arrogant as a child. My grandmother valued humility and taught me to do the same. This was especially the case with regard to my intellect. She reminded me, Virgil, you are never the brightest person in the room. This is for sure the case when I'm around my wife. But as I grow older, I understand more and more what she meant. If you think you are the smartest person in the room, you may hear, but you seldom listen. And if you do not listen, how can you learn? I have adopted this philosophy into both my professional life as a professor and in my personal life when I am around other people. Thankfully for me, my grandmother never taught me that anyone squawks, or else I would have had to figure out how to make that determination. I respect everybody equally. City councillors, as you go about making the decisions you are facing these coming months, remember that you are never the brightest person in the room and commit yourself to listening. I was an only child for nearly 5 years and thus was not the kindest big brother to my sisters. To be honest, I was often very selfish, only thinking about what was best for me and not being concerned with the consequences of my actions. My granny spoke to me about this often, and she always insisted that I treated others as I wanted to be treated and to face the consequences of my actions. I think that this is the perfect ethos for any public servant, and this is what you all are. Facing the consequences of one's actions does not mean an insincere apology that was staged to show off a bracelet. It means making amends for your wrongdoing. So what does making amends look like when you are fantasizing about killing 80-odd people? The one answer I know for sure to this question is that the perpetrator cannot be the judge of what real amends means. If your colleague is truly sorry, he needs to take his cue from those he wronged. But then again, why would he? After all, he is deaf to anybody he regards as squawking. I was wronged, and amends to me means resignation. The final lesson my granny taught me that I want to share revolves around principles. My granny always told me that principles are the hardest things to have. They are hard because often they run contrary to the path of least resistance. Oftentimes it makes you unpopular or it gets you marginalized. The words of your colleague makes this visible. Don't poke the bear. In other words, irrespective of what you think is right, if it runs contrary to the wishes of the bear, you have been warned to desist. But this bear only cares for a small part of the forest. City councillors, your job is to care for the whole. This is the oath that you took This is the principle that you swore to uphold. It means that as soon as the bear raises its homicidal head, that you poke it back into its lane. In short, using poker parlance, see his bear and raise him a bull. Serve the city, all the city, and not only the constituency that your colleague seems to care about. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Heather May.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Heather May, and I live on Delancey Drive. On July 19th, a counselor who was earlier tonight empowered with speaking a number of the people's comments during the public forum about the PAB was recorded saying, quote, "The colleges did their whole thing for police accountability. If I could have got a gun and shot the squares on my computer screen and killed everybody, it's disgusting." On that day, I occupied that square. Oops, right there. I'm next to former students, friends, colleagues. A city councilor wishes they could have got a gun, shot my square, and killed me. These words were spoken by this counselor one day after they attended that Police Accountability Board teach-in, and they wrote this in the chat there. "I'm walking away feeling good. I believe in process. This is important. If I could have got a gun and shot the squares on my computer screen and killed everybody." For 11 days, those words stood broadcast to all watching a live stream of the event to which they were spoken. The Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism has found, by studying FBI data, quote, "a correlation around the time of statements of political leaders and fluctuations in hate crimes. If I could have got a gun and shot the squares on my computer screen and killed everybody." After video surfaced of the counselor making these statements, they issued a short apology video in which they say that their comments embarrassed them. But at no point do they unequivocally state disavowal or that they would be appalled if someone else took them seriously. And at least one member of our community has responded to their video apology by saying, and I quote, "Personally, I think it's great he felt that way." I wonder how many in our community feel that way. I wonder what they might do about it. I wonder if by saying this publicly, with my face again in a Zoom box, I might be making myself more of a target. I wonder if my friends with whom I organized the teach-in that so offended the counselor might be hurt. Or my students. I wonder what this says about our city, that one of our elected officials has stated that they want to shoot 80 members of their community, including many of you on this call tonight. I wonder how it can be that a person who said they were more disappointed in themselves than any of us could be can still feel comfortable sitting on city council, representing me and the others they said they wanted to shoot. I wonder how all of you council members can sit alongside them, knowing that as long as they are beside you, you share responsibility for the words he uttered. I wonder. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kelly Johnson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Johnson. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I live on Washington Street. I want to just first thank you for the space to speak. And tonight I'd like to speak about comfort. And comfort is something that we all want. We know when we have it, and we know how amazing it feels to have. to be accepted truly as we are, and that this is a real gift when you have comfort. We often find this comfort when we're with the people that love us the most, right? And when we're with people that we can trust, and truly everybody deserves comfort. We know that comfort isn't granted to everybody, but that is for a whole nother meeting. As an educator, as a wife, and as a mother, I wish comfort, and I wish the space for people to have comfort for everybody. I want that for my students. I want that for all of you. Unless it diminishes the comfort of somebody else, unless it dims the light of somebody else. In 2020, right now, we face some new challenges, right? And we know that, but they're not far removed from old issues. And we also know that. So what do, right? What do? We find new ways to navigate things. We adapt, we adopt, we try to find new methods for survival, right? And some of this means that we have to have difficult conversations with our families, with our family members, with our children, with our friends, right? The same people who's provided you that comfort, you have to have difficult conversations with, and this is hard. It's necessary though. And I want to just put out there that education is not a one-way street. It is not top down. It should not be top down. Younger generations have so much to offer. They are on the pulse of so many of the current needs and concerns. And I think that they need to be heard, and they need to feel comfort, and they need to be supported. We live in a time right now where likes and friend requests offer support, and they offer comfort, and they build our ego, and they make us feel supported. And I'm sure that I'm not alone when I say that I've had to unfriend somebody that I've known for years, who I love, right? Because I found their online persona to be problematic, right? Or insulting, or somebody that I wouldn't want to be associated with. I'm sure I'm not alone when I say that I've exited family conversations with my loved ones, frustrated, isolated in my own disbelief that loved one that I know just said some stuff real casually that had racial undertones, or was sexist or misogynistic, or really not okay. So again, I come back to comfort. When people feel protected, they're able to let go. Seconds. They're able to let go. They're able to be their truest selves when they're comforted. A particular council member felt comfort. And this comfort sort of feels like a drunk uncle talking out of the side of their mouth. It sort of feels like grab 'em by the pussy. It sort of feels like somebody got caught. And I'm not comfortable with that person in any position of power. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Valerie Mallard.
Okay, sorry. You hear me?
Good evening, Val. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. You hear me?
Good evening,
Yep.
Val. Yeah, we can.
Okay, sorry. You hear me?
Good evening, Val. Yeah, we can.
You hear me? Okay. Good evening. My name is Valerie Mallard, and I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Geneva. I currently reside in Ward 2. I have always been proud to call Geneva my home. Recent events have forced me to look at things a little different. I am both saddened and disheartened by the division and racial tension that seems to have festered throughout the city. As adults, we should all realize that it is okay to agree to disagree, but we should do that in a respectful manner. Accountability. What is wrong with accountability? We all should be held accountable for our actions. No one should be exempt. In fact, as elected officials, you are held at a higher standard of accountability. My mother, as you know, is Lucille Mallard. She has been a pillar in this community, and she too sat in on the Zoom training where a person indicated that they would like to shoot and kill everybody on the screen. A person that I trusted that I brought into my family's circle to meet and to talk with. Now, another thing that I have a problem with is you don't want to hear or you're not going to listen to our concerns, yet we're contacted to meet, to talk, to discuss, and to agree. Elected officials are voted to serve constituents with integrity, dignity, objectivity, and in a non-biased manner. I'm not going to single out one counselor because actions of other members on council have also been disheartening and disrespectful. So there's two sides to every story. The recent events at best have fractured relationships and broken trust along party lines. Officials are elected to be key messengers for all voices. All voices, I repeat, not just some. During the election process as citizens, we make an informed decision and vote for the best candidate. You all here are who we have chosen in this city to be the best candidates to represent all citizens of Geneva, and one who will serve in an honorable manner. Members of the governing body of this city, I pose a rhetorical question to you all. What are you doing to bring this city back to the all-American status that we once had?
30 seconds.
As you continue in your efforts, remember this quote from the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And when you campaigned, you all talked about your love for Geneva. So let's bring our minds back in and get back to the basics. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Next is Adam Fryer.
Hello again. I did have a prepared statement for the PPP, but after hearing a lot of what everybody else has said today, I think I'm going to go a little off the cuff. Because I just want to remind, the first time I ever spoke to City Council, I reminded everybody that, or not reminded, just revealed to you all that I am a victim of police misconduct. And I was thrown on top of a cop car when I was 16, 17, some point in high school, for walking my girlfriend home on Genesee Street. She was a white person, and she lived on Avenue D or B. I can't remember. There was a bridal shop on the corner. I vividly remember every single detail about this night because what happened to me that night was terrible. Because as soon as she left and went to walk home, and 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it was dark at night, I get swarmed by 3-4 cop cars. And then the next thing I know is I'm just trying to comply. And I'm just, what's going on? Is everything okay? I'm concerned for them. Why am I here? What is this about me? And then next thing is come here, get on the hood. Don't move. Don't touch anything. I'm gonna empty your pockets. And they empty them all out, everything I had onto the floor, onto the ground. And there was no reason to do that to me. And they accused me of plotting or robbing that bridal shop. And all I remember is looking back while my hands are behind me is that they all had their hands on their holsters. Like, how terrifying is that? At any moment, if I made the wrong move or said the wrong thing, I might get shot. And I'm half white. And I grew up on Reed Street with my white mother at the time, and I didn't think racism existed. I thought it was something that we learned about in school, that Martin Luther King had marched for, and that we were done. And then after that experience, I was like, why did they do that to me? Next thing I go down to Watkins Glen, and I remember hearing the N-word, and I remember getting my change thrown at me and being treated differently. And then slowly you start to realize, like, this isn't dead. This is still around. So the reason I'm so adamantly about a police accountability board is because when that happened to me, there was nobody I could go to. When I told that story at a rally, one of the early peaceful protest rallies, that was the first time my mother had heard that story. Because I didn't feel like I could go to anyone. I walked home crying from Genesee Street to Reed Street because I was confused and had no clue who I could talk to. The police had just violated me for who I look like, for what I look like, for who I am, for no other reason than the fact that I was out late and waited for my white girlfriend to leave my side.
30 seconds.
And so Brian Chaffin, I just want to throw that name out there because he recently retired, but because I am so adamantly out here talking about police accountability, and that's it, not being anti-police, he has harassed me. He has harassed other people that are part of the PPP. He is threatening people. He has said the name of my family members online so people know who that is. And as far as I know, he still today was harassing a certain council member. And then he's spurred on by another council member who wants to shoot people who are for accountability. So that is systemic racism. It's not listening to us when we have an issue and then poo-pooing it away and saying that it doesn't matter. And we have to fight so hard. And the whole system is working against us, even when we followed every single rule. That is systemic racism. That is white supremacy, that our issues don't matter. I have to live with this trauma. I have to watch George Floyd die and think that's me. And remember, and vividly remember every single detail of what happened to me. When I'm talking to you right now, holding back tears because that happened to me. So remember that, Frank. Thank you.
Next on our list is Janet Gale. Or Jeanette Gale. I apologize if I got that wrong.
Hi. No, I'll take it. It's Jeanette, but I'll take it. Fine. Thank you again. Good evening again. Well, it was afternoon when we last met. It's now evening to city councillors and the fellow residents of Geneva. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeanette Gale. I live at 391 South Main Street. I'm in Ward 5. I'd like to preface my comments by saying that I have lived in Geneva for the past 5 years. And up until last weekend, I never felt unsafe. I loved Geneva, and I would tell everybody how safe I felt here. I never felt the need to look over my shoulder, to hold my keys in such a way that should I be attacked, they could become a weapon. I never thought I had to carry a mace or to buy a gun. Thanks to one city councillor's threatening language, that has changed radically. I now feel that I have little choice but to do one or all of these things. This concern extends to my family, my colleagues, residents in Geneva, and to my students. It is no way to live. This is me. On this, here I am. That's me. That's my square. Had the counselor had his way, he would have got his gun and shot me. I teach African American and women's history at HWS, and both of them, I want to say, are integral to American history, to understanding the history of our country. And I am one of the organizers of the racial justice teach-ins. I am also a mother and grandmother. And so what I say here is on behalf of my family and the larger community of people in Geneva. My comments address the current contretemps we as a city and you as a council face over this councillor's recent words and conduct directed at myself, my colleagues, fellow residents and friends on July 19th while he was at a Back the Blue rally in Geneva. The councillor used violent, threatening language to shoot me and my colleagues, the residents and friends who had attended the teach-in rally the day before, which the councillor had also attended. There are 3 reasons why this councillor must resign. The first is that he has broken trust. The second is that he is dishonest. And the third is that he is disrespectful. The councillor has broken my trust and does not deserve to serve on the city council. On October the 29th, 2019, I lifted this from his Facebook page. This councillor said, quote, "I will protect and serve everyone in Geneva with 100% integrity and pride." 9 months later, on July the 19th, the councillor said, quote, "If I could have got a gun and shot the squares on my computer screen and killed everybody," unquote.
30 seconds.
End of quote. Is this how the councillor serves? How can I possibly trust the councillor to protect and serve me? A promise the councillor made not 9 months ago. The councillor is not credible. On October the 29th, 2019, in a Finger Lakes Times article, the councillor said, "I think we can rebuild credibility." Is this how the councillor builds credibility? The councillor is not credible. The councillor has broken my trust, the trust of the residents of Geneva, and I dare say the trust of his fellow councillors. The councillor has proven to be untrustworthy and therefore is not fit to serve on the city council. To press the point, threatening to kill people, euphemistically or not, is totally unacceptable for anyone, much less for an elected official charged with the responsibility of serving the residents of the city. Moreover, to make such comments publicly as the councillor did, especially when mass shootings are almost quotidian, and in this charged political climate, is highly egregious and irresponsible. The councillor,
can I ask you
I
politely?
will. I'm almost finished. I made this statement along with the rules that I got. I have shortened it, but I must say my piece. The councillor might not have meant to follow through on his threats, but he might have influenced others to do exactly that. How would the councillor feel if someone acted on those words, stormed into my classroom to kill me, and ended up not only killing or wounded me, but also my students? Words have power. The councillor's words and behavior were beyond imprudent and were completely unbefitting of an authority figure. I accept the councillor's apology, but he must resign. I'm going to stop there. I have another half a minute, but I think that you get exactly what I have said.
Thank you, Jeanette. Next is Peter Gillott, and his statement will be read by Councilor Noon.
To Geneva Mayor, City Manager, and members of City Council, are requested to speak during the public forum at this meeting in person. However, I've decided to have my views read. The reason for this decision is because I'm very angry and a frustrated taxpayer. I do not want my voice or facial expressions while I speak to be a future video or audio tape. I fear that my words would be exploited by certain social media sites that have made it their livelihood to do so. After reviewing social media posts and Finger Lakes Times newsprints over the past few weeks, I came to the realization that most of this council has made up their minds on how they will vote long ago. To this day, and I can only speak for Ward 4, most registered voters have not been contacted by our councilperson to discuss our position on issues before you tonight. As a council, you have not shown any working knowledge of parliamentary procedures and decorum. Most of you work individually, holding on to your personal agendas without an effort of developing a team. I believe the surrounding communities find the political atmosphere of Geneva amusing, to say the least. You continue to meet via Zoom, even though you have numerous facilities within city limits that provide the necessary space for social distancing. For the record, Zoom meetings would be effective if everyone did not hide in shadows, making facial and body gestures, and were prepared with physical data necessary to discuss issues that will affect our financial future and well-being. It is also effective that no one leaves before the meeting is adjourned. There are other ways to show your frustration because the meeting was not going the way you and your group planned. You allow yourselves to be bullied and manipulated by local groups that feed off the national political unrest, supported by a college institution that has no business interfering with our local politics. That is, unless they are paying Geneva City and school taxes. Regarding 2020 and 2021 taxes, will you allow yourselves to be bullied and intimidated when making those decisions as well? Will Geneva taxpayers have any input on budget proposals, or are some of you going to cast your vote based on your personal agendas? The mayor, city manager, members of our city council have created these perceptions that I now have, and perceptions are reality. Thank you for those of you that did listen. Respectfully yours, Peter Gelati.
Thank you. Next is Sarah Whitten.
I don't see the name here, Mayor. Oh, there we go.
I am going to speak today about a certain counselor's words, and I wanted to speak about the implications of his words because we should not dismiss his words as empty. They have been widely broadcasted across social media, and politicians' words, be they national or be they local, carry tremendous power. Recently, ABC News has cataloged 54 violent crimes that were committed by perpetrators who expressly invoked the president's words as sort of giving them impetus to commit these kinds of crimes. And so we should remember that by provoking violence through our words, some people may take that as a real serious call to arms. This summer in particular has seen a huge amount of violence in connection with the Black Lives Matter and police reform protests, in which bystanders have attacked and killed protesters in various ways. James Sherlock in Omaha, Nebraska was shot by a bar owner on May 30th, and Summer Taylor was killed when she was run over by a car. Gunmen have shown up at protests in Ohio, in Utah, and in Missouri. So we should not take these as empty politician words. One of the things that makes me very proud as a Genevan is that the protests this summer have been tremendously peaceful. The protesters have been peaceful, the police have been peaceful, and the bystanders have been peaceful. And the counselor's words call into question that peace and make that peace much less sustainable. And so I think that the community has been very clear in calling for the counselor's resignation. And also, I think the community should be very clear in denouncing those words of violence because they put all of us at risk. Lastly, I want to point out the fact that the counselor's words call into question integrity and professionalism when our local politicians speak. And this is tremendously important when we talk about the Police Accountability Board, which is a tremendously hot button issue because it involves lots of local interests and local experiences, but it also involves lots of national interests and national sentiments. And so the city council should think about themselves, and also Geneva officials should think about themselves as setting the standards for the discussion in the community. And that the words that they use, both in terms of the council and the way that they speak to their constituents, and also the way that they behave in rallies and on social media, is incredibly important for setting the terms of the way that we talk to each other in this incredibly contentious time. Lastly, I hope the City Council makes a strong commitment to accountability and starting within the council and extending further out. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and the other councilors, for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next is Ricky Price.
Sorry, I had to doctor this one up.
Okay.
Says, my name is Ricky Price. If I could be there in person tonight, I would be holding up a picture of my face as a square from the Hobart College conference that they had. A certain counselor wishes he could have gotten a gun and shot the square and killed me. According to FBI hate crimes in the country, hate crimes are at a 16-year high. This is directly tied to the rise in dehumanizing rhetoric we have seen utilized by some politicians who identify as Republicans. From the president all the way to our city council member, this violent dehumanizing rhetoric should be seen not only as a threat, but also encourages their supporters to incite violence on people with different political opinions. You do not find this rhetoric at PPP rallies or at our college forums. In my classroom at HWS, there is only one rule: no dehumanizing language. This simple rule allows both my conservative and my liberal students to contribute to our class discussions. And it is that exchange of ideas, often from radically different viewpoints, that helps each of us develop critical minds and grow as human beings. Classrooms, unfortunately, in 2020 are also common sites of violence, often inspired by dehumanizing rhetoric. I should not need to go through the list of schools from Columbine to Sandy Hook to Parkland, or the terrorist acts of hatred that happened at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, or the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, or list the names of trans people who have been murdered in the past year. Names like, and I'm sorry, these names I don't recognize, I don't know the pronunciation, Meluzia Booker, Johanna Medina Leon, Kiki Fantroy, B. Love Slater, Alexa Luciano Ruiz, Serena Angelique Velasquez, Leila Pelez, Selena Reyes Hernandez, and Brayla Stone, to make the point that words matter, that Black lives matter, and this counselor should resign.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Crow.
Thank you very much. I'd like to offer comment on the relationship between the governing institutions of the city and the people that live here. As to the comments that have been so much discussed, I cannot see how the relationship between the city government and its people can go forward in good faith without new representation for the city at large. The city council took a historic vote last month, just before the 4th of July, and now we must look to the work of building the better future that that vote envisioned. That work will not be undone by threats of violence, even when those threats come from city leaders. Among free men, Lincoln said, there can be no successful appeal from the ballot to the bullet. I'm reminded even more of Robert Kennedy's words. Too often we honor swagger and bluster and the wheel.
Did his computer freeze up? Matthew, I can't hear you.
It looks like it, Lori. I'm not getting anything.
Okay. Mayor, should we come back to him then?
Yeah, let's leave some room. I'm not sure if he can communicate. Matthew, we can't hear you, so we're going to move on to the next person. If you can reestablish a connection, we will definitely take you towards the end. Let's move on to James McCorkle.
Good evening again. It's a long evening, I'm sure. I also teach at the colleges, but more importantly, I've been a long time, some 30+ year resident, property owner, taxpayer of the city of Geneva. I call Geneva my home. I'm going to start with a quote. You've heard the quote a lot. They don't have the balls. Like the Police Accountability Board, I don't even need to hear anything. My vote's no. The college did their whole thing for police accountability. If I could have got a gun, shot the squares on my screen, and killed everybody. Disgusting. Here I am. Second row, third over. That's me on this screen, shot. I'm with colleagues, friends, former students, neighbors whose kids grew up with my kids, council members, people I don't even know. This was a threat against me, a threat against everybody on that screen, everyone in this community, everyone in Geneva knows at least one of these people. That's how close we are, or perhaps how close we pretend to be. I don't know. I'm going to tell a couple stories, and I'll be very quick. First story. I was a victim of a hate crime. This happened in a Midwestern university town long before the 2009 Matthew Shepard Act that expanded the categories of hate crime from the earlier, very early, almost unprosecutable laws. I was severely beaten because I was perceived to be gay. How do I know? As I was kicked in the ribs, in the back, and the head after being accosted by two white men who jumped out of a car and accused me of being the F word, F-A-G-G-O-T, if you don't know, and other anti-gay slurs. After the kicking stopped, they got back in their car and left. I staggered back to my apartment, leaving a trail literally up 3 flights of stairs of blood. A neighbor heard me and took me to the hospital for stitches. Writing this out, it doesn't seem like much, right? Just he got beat up, that's all. Except it took me several new cities to finally feel safe to go out at night alone, sort of.
30 seconds.
And here in Geneva, it did for about 30 years. It felt safe. It did. I was going to tell another story, a family story about white supremacy, but time is short. Another time. Instead, here's another picture. You know this picture, I'm sure. August 12th, 2017, almost 3 years ago in Charlottesville. In it, you see the Ohio licensed car driven by James Alex Fields, just before he plows into a crowd of peaceful people protesting. 28 people are injured. Heather Heyer is killed. Fields is a neo-Nazi and a white supremacist. He was perhaps, as our impeached Republican president put it, one of those many fine people. I remember that when speaking before ranks of police, the impeached Republican president said, when you see these towns and when you see these thugs being thrown in the back of the paddy wagon, just see them thrown in rough. And I say, please don't be too nice. That was July 28th, 2017. The police laughed.
James, can you wrap
It's
it up,
on the
please?
tape. You can see them laughing. 2 weeks later, James Alex Fields will plow into a crowd of peaceful people protesting. What will Geneva do if that were to happen? I'll leave it there.
Next on our list.
Mayor,
Yep.
I think Matthew Crow is back.
Okay, great. We'll take him back. We'll take him back.
Matthew, if you're on, if you could unmute.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry, I'm calling on my phone now.
No problem.
I just have another minute of comments, so thank you for letting me take the time. In addition to the violence and the words that we've been discussing, I wanted to add that there are other slower and more subtle forms of force and violence that we need to discuss. And these are forms of established policy and political power. This is the force of quietly changed agendas, organized confusion, and opaque procedures for petitioning the government, a fundamental right of every citizen. This is the force of relocating the responsibility for drafting policy away from legitimate councils, away from the people themselves, to the closed offices of private agreements and appointed officials, acting beyond, perhaps beneath, their public mandate. This is the force of institutional rot and civic decay. I can only imagine that the appeal of such force lies in the assumption that the energy for change will dissipate, that the temporary inconvenience of an active citizenry can be somehow waited out. This isn't a storm, it's a sea change. Any presumption that the call of justice will go back quietly from whence it came is in grave error. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Penny Hankins.
Hello. I'm speaking tonight during public comment because I want to demand that
city councilors who openly wish violence and death on their constituents resign. An apology does not suffice, and remarks such as these are far more than just disparaging. A Geneva city councilor recently expressed his desire to shoot and kill the participants of an online police accountability forum put on by the local colleges, as we all know. Now, to some of you, this may seem like not a big deal, just words. But to me, I see it as something far more serious. A city councilor should have the best interests of all city residents in mind, not killing them. Truly, this city councilor did not. And why? Simply because people were learning how to hold the police accountable. What is so wrong with that? I was brought up that we should all be held accountable for our words and our actions. This city councilor reacted with homicidal rage, and now we know that what is in his heart and in his mind. He is not fit to represent this city. This city's residents deserve city councilors who want the best for them and don't want them dead. In addition, I believe city councilors serve as role models for their constituents. As such, this particular councilor incited violence towards those who support police accountability. His words were dangerous and disgusting. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Counselor, we do have the balls. For once in your life, hold yourself accountable and resign now.
Next is Teresa Johnson, please.
Can you see me? Hello?
I'm looking. Not yet.
Oh,
There
I
you
am.
go. There you go.
Hello. My name is Teresa Johnson, and I have spoken to, I believe, almost all of you at some point. I've lived in Geneva for almost 20 years. As an African-American woman, I'm just going to be point blank frank with you. The city council has lost any bit of trust that I might have ever had in anything that you will do. The backdoor practices that I've seen that you have done to undermine this police accountability board, finding a loophole to change it into a watered down version of no more than an oversight playground board with no power, is a slap in the face to every Black and brown person who's ever had anything happen to them. The fact that you have to argue over which council person on your board is the worst is another slap in the face. The fact that they cannot carry themselves in a respectful manner where the community spends more time arguing on which one is the worst should be something that you all should be ashamed of. As a person of Geneva, we always prided ourselves on being a city of diversity. Imagine my shock when I saw a city council member using the undertone dog whistle as the silent majority. Let me be clear. We of people of color know what the silent majority means. We are not silent. We have been suffering in silence for many years. And at this point, we will be silent no more. The fact that not one city council made a statement about any of these things that were said speaks volumes. The fact that it is looked over time and time again, actions of counselors on both sides speaks volumes. When is it going to be time to take accountability? I don't expect accountability board to have teeth when the city council don't seem to want to take accountability of themselves. What message are we sending to the community when we let elected officials do whatever they want to do? When we stand by and let what was said as idle threats, because shooting a computer screen with people's faces, and a person that I have known since I was a child was one of those faces. But I saw many people give out excuses of frustration. Well, if he was frustrated, imagine George Floyd and how frustrated he was with the knee on his neck. Imagine every Black and brown person and the frustration that we feel from years and years of discrimination. But yet, we hear the undertone of the silent majority. Well, I'm here to tell you and let you know that the silent majority has already spoken. They've spoken in marches, they've spoken in protests, they've spoken by asking for the Police Accountability Board. So I say I end this with this. As elected officials who are supposed to take pride in the things that they are doing, I ask you to take pride in being on city council. And if you can't hold yourself accountable and hold your fellow board members accountable, I do not expect nor believe that you will give us anything that represents an accountability board that we as Black and brown people deserve. I urge you, take a deep look in the mirror and ask yourself, because no one on this council looks like me. So you have a better privilege than I have of not having an accountability board and not taking the words when someone says they want to shoot a computer screen seriously. We don't. And I will end my comments there, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. Next is the NAACP letter that the city clerk will read.
This is a letter signed by Lucille Mallard, the president. This letter is being submitted to the City Council of Geneva, New York, to communicate the Geneva area NAACP's position on the comments made by a certain councilor on July 19, 2020. The NAACP officially calls for the immediate resignation of this councilor. We understand from several sources in an apology that, they wanted to say what was said. We are deeply troubled by the comments made, and we feel that this person no longer is fit to represent the great city. These words were not a slip of the tongue or brought about by frustration. The words appeared to be strategically planned, premeditated, preconceived, and placed such that his allies could hear across the state of New York. It is our sincerest belief that the words used have become the code and underpinning language that supports the continual nurturing and sustaining of a racism across our nation. And then to add language similar to that of a terrorist, I could get a gun and shoot the squares, is unthinkable. They feel that the apology was rendered useless by the fact that he was flaunting a thin blue line in their faces as a show of solidarity with those who he assumes he was defending. The only way the Geneva City Council to move forward with the business of the city is to heal. For the city to heal is for this person to resign. His actions are currently a negative reflection on him and him alone. But if he does not resign, his actions will become the standard for what the Geneva City Council believes is acceptable behavior going forward. If he cares for the city, he will resign effective immediately.
Thank you very much. Next is Kellen Stanfield.
Hello. Again, my name is Kellen Stanfield, and I reside in Ward 5. I'm here to comment on 3 items of new business on tonight's agenda. Resolution 43-2020, Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 203, contained within the Police Reform Consultation Plan, and the draft local law accompanying Resolution 44-2020. First, I urge unanimous vote in favor of the city sending a letter to U.S. Senate leaders urging immediate passage of $500 billion of federal funds for local governments. Reporting and projections are widespread. State and local governments are experiencing a pandemic-induced catastrophic drop in revenue that will lead to calamitous outcomes if not offset by federal aid. The American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees is leading the Fund the Front Lines grassroots campaign, in which members of the union are putting pressure on their local, state, and federal representatives to in turn put pressure on Congress to provide adequate relief. I gladly offer my expertise in support of any efforts being pursued by AFSCME Council 82 on our respective state and federal legislative districts. Second, Executive Order 203 directs the city to create a plan to eliminate racial inequities in policing. To do so, as a community, we must know the extent of racial inequities. We must have historical data at the incident level of all calls for service and all offer and initiated incidents. For each incident, we need demographic data, the cause of the incident, the duration of the interaction, whether a weapon was drawn or other force used, whether a resident was detained or arrested, whether a ticket was issued or criminal charges filed, and whether a conviction resulted. If we do not have the data to identify the existing racial inequities, then we cannot create a plan to eliminate them. I urge the council to use its powers to compel the production of this data to the extent allowable by New York state law. Lastly, Resolution 4022 finds that the Geneva City Council intends to increase transparency of the actions of Geneva Police Department to ensure accountability of officers. In order to increase transparency and ensure accountability, any police oversight entity must have the power to compel the production of evidence from GPD and irrelevant city departments, must be charged with reviewing all GPD policies, procedures, rules, and patterns, and must conduct independent investigations on complaints of police misconduct. I urge council to table Resolution 40-2020 if the accompanying local law is not amended to provide these powers and duties. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next is Jackie Augustine.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. I just had a couple of questions about some of the other resolutions or ideas that were brought forward both by the NAACP and the People's Peaceful Protest. Specifically, there were some reforms included in the NAACP letter that was submitted, I believe, at the end of June, following a conversation that they had with Councilors Noon and Councilor Galanese. I think we can probably assume that those proposals will not be brought forward by those councilors, but I'm wondering if there is a process by which the council intends to give an opportunity for people to weigh in with some of the ideas that were presented that haven't yet been talked about. And I guess I would just say that I don't know that the Code of Ethics, which a few councilors, Councilor DiCostanzo and myself worked on a long time ago, I don't know if it necessarily anticipated the kinds of things we're seeing happening right now. So I would ask council, as a show of restoring or gaining some confidence of the public, to consider some amendments to the Code of Ethics that might address social media use and also some degree of censure that could be put on people who say things that are directly threatening to the public. I just think that would be a helpful measure of professionalism. One last thing I wanted to say, since it's missing from the proposal for the public hearing, the proposal that the city attorney prepared called a police accountability board, which actually does not achieve that objective, is missing one key component that I think has been misunderstood, and that is this disciplinary matrix. I think it's incorrect to keep saying that the board, as proposed by the PPP, was a disciplinary body. The idea of a disciplinary matrix was simply for the chief, the city manager, and the board to get together and say, if officers committed a particular offense, these are the types of punishments that would be meted out. And I think predictability and transparency is part of what builds trust and professionalism. And in the same way that I'm encouraging city council to have some standards, I think the idea is just to be able to communicate to the public what the expectations are and then what the penalty might be for out of bounds conduct. Again, you can be for police accountability and not be anti-police. I am of the opinion that we have an awful lot of really good officers, and I think we can't say that with any degree of certainty unless we actually have a standard against which we're measuring the conduct. So I think it's just important that we do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lucille Mallard.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Lucille, we can.
Can you see me?
Now we can see you.
Okay. Everybody know I'm Lucille Mallard, the president of the Geneva chapter of the NAACP, and I was also one of those people on the panel for Hobart William Smith College on July 18th. Before I move forward, I do want to backtrack to the meeting on July 1st when lots of people made lots of negative statements. And one of the things that I truly need to say is when Councilman Noon made a comment about the NAACP, there was some stuff on Facebook that really made him appear as to be racist because he used the statement, colored people. We do not feel the statement, colored people, is a racist statement because the NAACP also stands for National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Having said that, I want to move on to what I want to say tonight. I was sent the link, 2 links. The first one was a very, very disturbing one. When I saw and heard what was on that video, I'll be truthful, it felt like a knee was on my neck. That's how hurt I was because we had talked to council people and it seemed as if they were hearing what we were saying. But then to have somebody say, you know, if I had a gun, I would shoot and kill. I'm not quoting it like it was said. That was hurtful. But I think the thing that bothers me most is the statement when it was said that I am not listening to anything. My vote is no. So how could a person who's representing a community as a council person can say, my vote is no, even before a vote has been called? And to put it out there publicly, I think it is a disgrace to our whole city. So to continue what I'm saying, I believe that people have a right to think what they want to think. That's their privilege. But when they openly start speaking their thoughts and their feelings to disgrace people, to degrade people, to make people feel unwanted, unacceptable, or discredit people, or humiliate people, I think it is wrong when you're trying to do something to advance your own agenda and your own cause. Saying that, I don't care who it comes from, it is wrong to degrade and disgrace other people to get your point across. Coming from a person who's lived in Geneva for 63 years, and I'm not going anyplace. I worked in Canandaigua for over 50 years, and people have asked me, why don't you move to Canandaigua? Geneva is my home. Geneva is my love. And right now, Geneva as a whole, we're hurting. We're hurting because of the actions and behaviors that's going on that is dividing our city. Of all the proposals I've read, I have never seen anybody or read anything that said that our chief was incompetent. I haven't seen anybody say that they were anti-police, especially the NAACP. We're not anti-police. We work with the Geneva police, not as an informant, as some people might think, but we work to try to better the relationship between our community and the police department. So when people talk about, get upset when people talk about Black Lives Matter and all lives matter, well, if all lives matter, there would be no reason to have a Black Lives Matter rally. And I hope people can understand where I'm coming from, because if all lives matter, Black people would be included in all lives. It would not be a separate. We have to do this so people can notice who we are, so we can get some respect. So the accountability board, I am all for it. The NAACP is all for it. And it is not, people need to understand, the accountability board is not to protect the minority community. The Police Accountability Board is for all citizens in Geneva. It will represent all cities in Geneva. And if people are thinking it's just going to be people of color a minority of people's on that board, think again, because that's not going to happen. I just want to say we need to come together. We need to put aside our differences. Geneva has won so many awards for this thing or that thing. Geneva has been awarded for a national recognition. So let's not let our community around us destroy it by saying negative things about what's going on in our city now. People who are on our council who are doing things that are not, not in the best interest of us should look at themselves and say, I need to make a change in order for Geneva to strive and to be the city that we know it is. We know it is. We need to come together and put aside all of our differences. First ward to the 6th ward, it is still Geneva, and it need to be treated like it's a one Geneva, not us against them or them against us. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucille. Next on our list is Hannah Dickinson.
On May 31st, as some have already referenced this evening, the City of Geneva asked or recommended that businesses board up and consider closing early because there might be protesters in Geneva. On June 2nd, a tractor trailer came very close to hitting a group of protesters in downtown Geneva. When the police were called, the 911 call was never responded to. On Friday, the Geneva Believer released a video of a sitting Geneva City Council member at a Back the Blue rally saying he wanted to shoot and kill everyone involved in an 80-person teach-in on police accountability. And just this evening, a recently retired GPD officer arrived outside a sitting city councilor's house, laid on the horn for nearly 5 minutes, and laughed and waved when they arrived at the door. What do these events have in common? They follow the same pattern we've seen in cities across the US this summer. Black and brown people, activists, organizers, people trying to fight for a better future are being intimidated and repressed in their fight for racial justice and against police terror. And while some news sources will try to say different, this is a one-sided escalation of violence. At the start of the summer, when we saw images of people in other cities justifiably angry about police misconduct, and in some cases engaging in property damage, what we have seen since then is a summer of severe repression. Protesters in Portland and New York kidnapped by DHS in unmarked cars, police firing rubber bullets, pepper bombs, and flashbangs into peaceful protests, tractor trailers and cars purposely barreling into protesters. Day after day, as tensions escalate in Geneva and around the country, the people's peaceful protest has been peacefully demonstrating, organizing, and agitating for police accountability while facing threats online and harassment in the streets. And they've self-organized in response. They have marshals who help direct traffic, a medic for people who might have heat stroke or dehydration. They provide food, not just for the people who come to the protests, but anyone who walks by. They provide water. They make sure everyone has a safe ride home. The PPP and the people of Geneva are fighting to be free of white supremacist and police terror, while other communities, including a city sitting councilor, are fighting to maintain the racist, oppressive status quo. Geneva's PPP is agitating for justice, while reactionary forces in this city actively foment a violent climate in which too often police claim they're the victims while they're the ones who get to act with impunity. Last week, I marched with Corey Jackson's family to commemorate his life and to protest the out-of-control police department responsible for his death 9 years ago. The dignity, the warmth, the generosity of his family and the movement that supported them was incredibly moving. And when Corey Jackson's family addressed the crowd, among the things they said was, We know most of you don't even know Corey. We're so moved and grateful that you're still out remembering him, saying his name, and fighting for justice.
30 seconds.
It couldn't be clearer. Police accountability in Geneva is 9 years too late. Last month, the majority of you agreed to hold a public hearing on Police Accountability Board with teeth. You owe it to the people who have been sharing their stories, experiences, the people who have demonstrated an incredible willingness to engage in the democratic process, and the people who have demonstrated incredible courage in the face of reactionary violence and threats to stick to your word.
Okay, next we have Princess Eldridge.
Princess Eldridge. Hello.
Hello, Princess. We got you.
Hi. Can you see me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, yes. So my name is Princess Eldridge, and I'm speaking today as a citizen of Geneva who lives in the 5th Ward. I was born and raised here. It's been probably, well, close to, but not really 50 years. As a child, I played for numerous hours with neighborhood kids and other children from all over town. As an adult, I raised 4 wonderful children, cared for an aging parent, and became the woman I am right here in Geneva. I said that to let you know that I'm vested in my hometown. I love Geneva. This is why I can feel the racial tension that has divided us. It's okay to agree or disagree with different views and ideas. It becomes a problem when it causes division. During the campaigning process for city council, I heard time and time again, 6 wards, 1 Geneva. While we are yet contemplating changes, let's remember that the healing that Geneva needs to happen now. I would like the council to devise a means for us to come together as a community. Now, I know this is difficult because we have COVID and all those restrictions, but there are things happening around town that can happen with us as well. Each ward meeting in an open public area could be an option, where our counselors would talk to us, and then they would take our thoughts and ideas back to the council to discuss. That's important, and we need to do that right away, so please don't drop the ball. I'm asking that each ward get some sort of open place that we can all meet and maybe have our opinions talked about so that you can do what you're supposed to do and bring it all back to the council and then hash everything out from there. Certainly giving us a voice. It is time spent together that will help us. Whether or not our opinions differ, we are the same people. Thank you for this time, and let me know if there's something I can do.
Thank you very much, Princess. Next is Jeff Henderson.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Valentino. I didn't have a chance. I couldn't find the meeting agenda on the city website, so I don't know if the revised chicken keeping ordinance is coming up tonight. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it because in the grand scheme of things, it's not very important. It is important to some people in Geneva, and I recognize that time has been spent and put into revising the ordinance and bringing it before council, and particularly Councilor Regan. I thank her for all of her efforts in that regard. It's in the latest draft that I saw, it's something that I wouldn't support because it is presented as a pilot program to be assessed after 2 years to give 20 families the opportunity to own chickens in Geneva, and then after 2 years to assess whether the program has been successful or not. The ordinance doesn't indicate any means of measuring success, and it also indicates that if the pilot program is not considered successful, that people will need to remove the animals from their property within 30 days. And I've seen firsthand that chickens become pets, people become attached to them when they raise them in their homes for even a month. They don't want to see them go to the co-op, and I do not support something that would take people's pets away from them after 2 years if they've cared for them and they've become part of the family. Moving on, I think it's unconscionable that one of you is still up there tonight. I've spent a lot of time in Geneva working on community projects. I've been involved in a number of things with a number of very good people and people who spend their time and put their efforts towards making Geneva a better place. The 80 people who are on that panel hosted by HWS were people like that. They didn't have to be there. They were taking the time to express their opinion, to work towards a better Geneva, and to come to some consensus about what that meant. One of you shoved your way into their lives, and for many of them, that's a trauma that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. I sit here and watch the comments, I listen to the comments, and I watch the facial expression on the counselor. I've read the apology. It's clear that it was meaningless. Your facial expression betrays how you feel, and your thoughts and your feelings on the matter don't change overnight. A resignation is in order. This space is no longer a safe space for many Genevans. This space that is filled with squares makes people feel vulnerable now. It's hard enough to get up here and speak your mind to this council. I've done it many times and it's difficult. It never gets easier. But if you feel like you're a target, if you feel like you're going to be intimidated, if you feel like you're not welcome, you're not going to do it. You're undermining the citizenry of Geneva. The rest of you on council are accountable for each other's actions. Accountability comes up over and over again. It is your responsibility to maintain the integrity and the character of this council.
30 seconds.
If one of you fails, it's a failing of all of you. Therefore, I hope that you would join me and many countless others in requiring the resignation of this counselor who is no longer fit to lead Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Next is Barney Goldstein, City Clerk will read.
Okay. Barney says, like many Genevans and those outside Geneva, I'm disturbed, well, actually outraged by the recent conduct of a current city councilor that occurred on July 19th. I want to add my name to the growing chorus of voices urging the resignation of this councilor. If city councilor had a structure and process for removal of a city councilor, we would no doubt be urging his immediate termination. Inexplicably, it does not. This councilor's behavior would be reprehensible by any citizen, but councilors are not just citizens. They are elected and represent all of Geneva. And councilors should not be disrespectful or exhibit poor impulse control, as evidenced by last month's city council meeting. For those of you who defend this councilor because they apologize, let me just say that no apology, this was no apology from his perspective. As long as a councilor remains on council, the president delegitimizes and stigmatizes the entire council. Council cannot afford to be dragged down at a time when it needs to be lifted up to meet the many complex challenges before it. And he just asked council to do the right thing.
Thank you, Lori. This will be your last one, I believe. This is Lowell Dewey, City Clerk will read, please.
Yes, yes. Mr. Dewey says to please add his voice to those in favor of the marina. I would like to keep a boat there in a heartbeat. Travel to Watkins Glen to see what the marina there does for the local economy. Large and small boats would travel north to visit and shop and eat and stay here. Dock fees would pay for the marina's maintenance. Easy access to the canal adds to the attraction for those considering buying a boat and keeping it within walking distance of our homes. Boats entering and leaving a harbor add to ambiance and a sense that Geneva is a destination and is prospering, which it is. To not utilize funds obtained through a state grant would be wrong at best and irresponsible at worst. Those funds would go elsewhere. Please pass this on to council members. I cannot attend tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. The next one is Mr. Jim Meany.
Good evening, Council. I'm Jim Meany. I was a City of Geneva resident for 8 years in Wards 5 and 6 before moving just over the city line into the town of Geneva this year. And I continue to be involved in efforts to make the city that I love a better place for everyone. Last month, I was euphoric to see the City Council approve a resolution to hold a public hearing for a local law to finally create a police accountability board in Geneva. I was even more pleased to hear the City Attorney enthusiastically encourage Council to pass the resolution, even suggesting that the gold standard of PAB laws, the one used in Rochester, would be used as a template. A few weeks later, the City Attorney went to the media and said the complete opposite, that the public hearing would not be held because the local law that he encouraged Council to pass hadn't been submitted in time, and because, quote, the City Council has not provided the City Attorney with direction on how to proceed, end quote. When the City Attorney goes to the media and blames City Council for his own refusal to do his job and is dishonest in the process, it makes city government look dysfunctional and rudderless. Meanwhile, the City Attorney, City Manager, and Mayor have repeatedly misled the public by claiming that any PAB law will need to follow the Governor's executive order on police reform. What they're not telling the public is that a representative from the Governor's office had answered that question in an email that Council saw, saying explicitly that the executive order does not preclude a municipality from enacting any police reform laws outside of the executive order plans that are due in 2021. And within days after the deadline passed for the local law to be prepared for tonight's canceled public hearing, the City Attorney miraculously submitted an entirely new, watered-down local law that does literally nothing to address police accountability and is a slap in the face to the councilors who voted for the public hearing and to the people of Geneva who have asked for police oversight for decades. Please don't vote for this public relations stunt masquerading as an accountability board. I'm most disappointed in the city manager, who I've heard and seen on multiple occasions speak publicly about her desire for Geneva to be a trauma-informed city. Now the city manager has been involved in obstruction of a law that would help address the trauma experienced by so many of our residents at the hands of police. And now I see that her public comments about wanting a trauma-informed community as performative and inauthentic. The corrupt and potentially illegal actions by the city attorney and the city manager to subvert the will of the majority of council and the people should not be allowed. And I hope that council has the will to relieve the city manager and the city attorney of their duties. I stand with the NAACP and the people's peaceful protest in support of a local law for a robust and effective PAB with teeth. Council must reject the city attorney's PAB and start working on the real one. And finally, I can't believe that anyone should have to say this, but Frank Galanese should have resigned 5 days ago.
Hey.
Thank you.
Next is Akeem Hudson.
Can you hear me?
Good evening, Akeem. Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, peace to anybody that's tuning at home. Peace to everyone that is on the Zoom meeting and the city council and the city mayor. I've dedicated this time to talk about change and the reality of change and why it must happen within Geneva. One must mold their skin and grow into a new version of themselves from time to time. I personally attempt to strengthen a weakness of mine each month, while exercising my strengths to keep them efficient, also rebuking the toxins and negative traits of myself. Not with the intention to become the perfect, but rather become a better person in my own mind. The only reason I feel that many people don't want to change is because the reality of change is scary to people. To think about how your reality as you know it is no longer a serendipitous experience like no other. But for some, it's difficult to let go of these emotional connections to these experiences, a latent danger and the concept of nostalgia. Being so immersed in the past that you are afraid to move on to your future. There are things in life that you can't escape from. So one is left with no choice but to adapt to the situation, learn to accept change, learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, learn to evolve. I say those who refuse to change also refuse to look in the mirror. There's change everywhere, every moment of each day around each of us. But there is no change of self until it starts internally. There's no change within the society until the individuals within it change. Change is inevitable, so there's no need to fear. Take a gander into the mirror rather than looking at the mirror. Peace.
Thank you, Hakeem. Last, we have Quorum Hussein.
All right. Thank you. I first want to just say that for a city that I love, that I've lived in and toiled in for 13 years, I don't think I've attended to any people in my life other than my kids more than the people of Geneva. This is a wrenching moment for so many of us to see a community where our trust in one another, our capacity to see one another has so utterly challenged at this moment. And so I just want to offer just a couple reflections, and I can't say it better than Hakeem just did. And first and foremost, this is an opportunity for us to look a little bit deeper. And I think if we don't look deeper, we've lost the tremendous gift that this challenge offers us. I remember as a child playing soccer behind my middle school and having these young white men come out of the woods and point guns at me. And they weren't much older than me, but they learned something about violence and who to point that violence at a very young age. And so I think it's easy to make this about one person and one moment and not step back and ask ourselves, where does this kind of violent imagination come from? Why is it that we don't see people react this way when we talk about other measures for social reform? If someone were to say we need to create a tenure review process for teachers, the reaction isn't typically, well, I hope that you die and I'd like to kill you myself. Where does that reaction come from is deep in the cultural DNA of our country and of our community. And if we can't look at that, if we can't look at that deep racial instinct, then we are not going to heal as a community. We're not going to build the beloved trust that we've been called to by so many people on this call. And I think that where I hope that we can go is exactly where Hakeem invited us to go, is to look in the mirror. I know that for the council person that has been focused on tonight, there's a lot of walling off that's probably happening right now. And there's an unwillingness to look deeply at where these accusations are coming from, which is a deeper pain at that violence that is being perpetrated again and again in our community because we're not looking deeply. If you can't see what's racist about this moment, then all I can do is invite us all to ask why we can't see that, to potentially ask people in our communities that do see that to teach us where this is coming from. Because I think if we can do that, if we can do that work, I think we can get to a point where we can start to heal from this, and we can look at the call for civil and human rights that are being called for in this moment by Black and Brown communities as something that we don't have to react to with a kind of vicious, violent, visceral reaction that has been so historically embedded in this country's history, and that we can do something better. So I just want to offer that, because I do think that there's a restorative opportunity here, but it's got to start from within, and that has to start with our leaders modeling their willingness to see what was racist about this moment. So I wish us all strength in this moment, and I know that you're going to forge ahead because you've been forging through this whole night, and may we continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. That'll end our public comment for tonight, and we're going to move on to unfinished business. The first item on the agenda.
What about me? You skipped me. I was the first speaker. I wasn't here. I was told that I would get a chance at the end.
I'm not even sure who's speaking.
Daniel Pickey.
Daniel, you had signed up for the previous public hearing. I had you to repeat on the next one, but if you...
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, I'll be short.
Thank you very much.
And respectful, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. So I'm Daniel Pickey. I reside in Ward 5. I just want to talk about a couple of things. Number one, I am part of that silent majority that people have talked about. I'm a patriot. I'm a red and white and blue blooded patriot. I'm not a white supremacist, quote unquote. There's no white supremacist undertone with the silent majority, like some racists before me have said. I would like to just talk about some of the instances where I have felt attacked for my being a white straight male. And I've been harassed by the leaders. I've been told by the leaders of the BLM movement locally that I smell like mayo, that I engage in bestiality, that I shoot up schools, all of which are racially based comments coupled with the fact that they call me a white supremacist for simply speaking out against something that is truly Marxist. And the reason why I call it Marxist is because I'd like to address all the Hobart William Smith interference within our city of Geneva government. If you notice, 90% of the comments that are for the Police Accountability Board came from people who are all no more than 2 degrees away from being connected with Hobart William Smith. And I'd like to point out that there's a group called the Geneva Women's Assembly, consisting of card-carrying communists, one of which is best friends with a certain city council member. That certain city council member is on the Geneva Women's Assembly. And it would be absurd with the national idea that the BLM movement is Marxist to not see that the connection there is blatant interference. I got some more that I want to bring up. I mean, just the fact that we have, a ton of rich people telling us how we should run our city is ridiculous. They're talking about, privilege and racism, systematic racism, right? And to me, number one, there's no such thing as systematic racism in America. That's a fallacy. There's no data to suggest it. That's feelings over fact. While those anecdotal examples are horrible and they should never take place in America, we have one of the most diverse upper and middle class in the world. And I want to put that on record. And also that this outrage machine that is produced by the Hobart William Smith faculty over a certain counselor's comments at the Back the Blue rally is created by a video that was doctored. The audio was taken out, edited, reproduced, and then put back in the video by a man who was sued just recently, months ago, by the employer of that said counselor. So I don't understand how we can even take this seriously. They're baseless claims. Everybody's talking about being scared. You guys are, these Hobart William Smith professors are so emotionally unstable. I don't know how they're teaching our youth. And lastly, I just want to thank Fry Boy for teaching us how to fake cry.
Time. Thank you very much.
Over a tragedy that was fake. Absolutely. He doesn't even remember the whole thing.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're moving on to unfinished business. Adam, Flowers. Are we okay?
Yes,
move
we're
on?
good. We're
Thank you
good.
very much. Okay, so the first one is a tabled resolution. I thought this one was going to be tabled forever from our last meeting. The comment was that this would be tabled and just for reference, but it looks like it has come back. It's a resolution to establish the first step police department reform for a better community for all, presented by Councilor Campbell.
I'm sorry to ask this, but is it possible to get a break for like 2 minutes? I mean, can we go to, I mean, I just need a bathroom break. I'm sorry.
If we could go to item number E and F, which is the Marsh Creek wastewater treatment plant improvement project, if that is agreeable as a majority of council.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, let's go to the boring stuff, right? Okay. All right, we'll do resolution designating City of Geneva City Council as lead agency for the Marsh Creek wastewater treatment plant. If anybody needs to go for relief, then that would be a great time. This is for the wastewater treatment plant projects under the provisions of the seeker presented by our city manager, number 41/2020. There you go.
And just for our wastewater treatment plant staff, this is an important project, but there was a lot. No, there's a lot to read, and so I know counselors have read it. And so when anyone gets back, we will not do any voting. I'm going to give an overview of it. We have a wonderful system. It's called ATAD. It's auto-heated thermophilic aerobic digestion, and that is a system that not many people in the country have. And we are looking to make an improvement in the future. We're not asking council this evening to do that, as the potential grants are not available, as well as are still looking at our fiscal possibility to do the grant if it comes out this year. This stage is the second phase of the seeker process. This is a New York State review process, and should say that this project could be listed under a more kind of unlisted action, which wouldn't need the length of this review, but because we're seeking funds and it is also with our wastewater treatment plant, we are doing a more conservative approach and did a full environmental assessment form. So before you are two resolutions. The first one that you'll do is declaring yourself lead agency, and you made that intent at a previous council meeting. We send it out to any interested or involved agencies to get their feedback, and we did not hear that anybody else would want to take on that role. So you'll be doing that vote, and after you do that, that gives you the authority in which to review the full environmental assessment form and make a determination if there's going to be a significant environmental, or determining the environmental significance. So I'm going to go through, it's a long packet, but there's a couple items just to review. And the very beginning of it is a summary of the potential impacts. And those potential impacts are noted as you go through part 2, and then you make your determination. So the impact on land, I should first just say that this, to give you a little more detail, we're converting a former process, a former tank that was used for an anaerobic digester into the ATAD reactor tank. So it's an existing facility on the wastewater treatment plant that we'll be converting. We are not going into any new green areas, but during the construction, there will be some stripping of vegetation and bare soils that will be exposed during the construction period. The documents that we prepared in any of the construction protocols will be able to address any potential erosion. Also, just noticing that there is an adjoining state Class C stream next to it, and they will be all the provisions necessary so that any erosion does not go into the stream. There are many pieces that you would have reviewed about impacts to the water quality or stormwater discharge, and all that is addressed in the erosion control measures. Also like to note that this sits in an area that is part of it, is part of Marsh Creek. And I was going to, does anyone need me to share their screen and see this? I have a picture of the facility. All right. But there is located within the 100-year floodplain. So again, there will be erosion control measures. Also, it was looked at to see if there's a presence of any endangered or threatened species, rare plants or animals, or natural communities that might be impacted. And they use, the consultants used the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service online software and did not identify the presence of any federally listed endangered species or critical habitats. And New York State DEC Region 8 was contacted as an involved agency, and they were sent this information as well. Also, it's part of the review is to look at any historic and archaeological resources. This is located in an area that has an archaeological sensitive area, and consultation was made with the State Historic Preservation Office and their Cultural Resource Information System, and we have received a no effect finding letter on June 26th from SHPO indicating that no historic properties, including archaeological or historic resources, will be affected by this undertaking. And lastly, noise during construction is always a concern to our neighboring residents, and they deem that it will be small to moderate and only temporary in nature if there's any construction activities, and they'll limit the days and times that might occur. So I'm going to stop there and have the first resolution, which will be designated the city as a lead agency, have a motion for that.
We have a motion. Councilor Camera, second. Everybody, there you go. Councilor Pruitt. Discussion. And I just want to be first, if everybody doesn't mind. I would like to apologize for saying the boring stuff, because sometimes I take for granted. The wastewater treatment plant is just phenomenal. It's state of the art. It's one I take for granted. It's very efficient. We do such a great job. So I apologize for that comment. Anybody else? Okay. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilor Camera? Councilor Salamandra? Aye. Thank you. Councilor Pruitt?
Aye.
Councilor Noon?
Aye.
Councilor Galanese?
Aye.
Councilor Burrell?
Aye.
Councilor Peeler?
Aye.
Councilor Regan?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion
Thank you very
carried.
We're going to do resolution F since it's related, and then we'll go back to A. So resolution determining the environmental significance of the City of Geneva Marsh Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant Improvements Project under the provisions of the seeker, presented by our city manager, which she just did a lot of.
So in your council packet, you have, again, parts 1, 2, and 3, as well as supplemental information that's been read. I've reviewed kind of the impacts that were noted, and the resolution before you is that there will not be any significant adverse environmental impacts based on the full environmental assessment form and review.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion, please? Councilor Campbell, a second on Councilor Noon. Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Camera?
Aye.
Councilor Salamandra? Aye. Councilor Pruitt?
Aye.
Councilor Noon?
Aye.
Councilor Galanese?
Aye.
Councilor Burrell?
Aye.
Councilor Peeler?
Aye.
Councilor Regan?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion
Okay,
carried.
going back up to A, Councilor Camera, I'll read it again real quick. Resolution establishing first step in police department reforms, which might not be the first step, but for a better community for all. You're muted, Councilor Camera.
Thank you, Mayor. What I wanted to do, this was submitted a while back, originally submitted more like the beginning of July. And one of the concerns and the reasons that I submitted this and for consideration and passage was that I had some concerns about the amount of time that we would have to spend configuring a police accountability board. And what I was concerned about was, let's not make everything else wait. Later on, the city council, passed these resolutions related to some of the other factors, like body cam policy, as well as the PAB resolution as well. One of the things that I would like to...
Councilor Camera, I hate to interrupt, but I forgot a procedural thing. When something's tabled, it needs to be...
Second.
It needs to be brought back onto the agenda, onto the table. So yeah, we need a motion and a second to move it back onto the agenda. I apologize.
Okay. I'm just asking it to go, I don't mind it being tabled again, but I wanted to just make a statement, but I'll defer to the room.
So we need a motion to put this onto the agenda since it was tabled before, and a second.
Forget it.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next item, which is item B, which is a discussion of the bylaws for the body camera task force. And I would like Councilor Noon to kind of kick this off, just as a preface to this, and to number C, the bylaws. These are two resolutions that were passed on July 1st. Both of them took some initiative. I know there's been some concerns about councilors that voted yes and councilors that voted no. My opinion was, Councilor Noon called me and said, how can I help with anything going on? I said, geez, there's a couple resolutions that need to be moved forward. There's multiple resolutions that need to be moved forward. Some of them are council's responsibility. Nobody's stepped forward yet. So please go ahead and do what you can to help these along. And so I compliment him and thank him for the efforts he's taken on the next two resolutions. There is no decision based on the work he's done. It's work that's done to be brought before council for discussion. And that's why we're having this discussion. So if you can lead us forward on the body camera, I would appreciate that.
So thank you, Mayor. And as the Mayor just stated, that there has been no final decision made to these bylaws of either the Police Budget Advisory Board or the Body Camera Policy Task Force bylaws. As he stated, I just wanted to know how I could help moving these things forward, especially as they were, pressing issues that the PPP and others have brought forward. And the Police Budget Advisory in particularly had a deadline of July 31st. So it was definitely imperative that we get moving on those. So the first one is, as the Mayor had mentioned, is the Body Camera Policy Task Force. Basically, the bylaws just, are pretty basic bylaws. They explain the purpose of the committees, the responsibilities, how the membership will be chosen, the requirements of the membership, the appointment of members, who the chairperson will be for each one of these boards, the length of the term, especially with the Police Budget Advisory Board, which we are anticipating being a long-term board versus the Body Camera Policy Review Task Force. Speaking to, I know City Manager Gerling, she is intending that to obviously be just as long as it is necessary to review a policy and provide any recommendations to the chief on how to change our current one, or obviously state that our current one is just fine. So that one will definitely not be as long-term as the Police Budget Advisory Board. So tonight they've been brought forth in front of all of you to obviously seek feedback, seek discussion. The police budget or the Police Body Camera Task Force in particular, Sage and I essentially worked on that together. I submitted the bylaws to her, and then her and I went through that. And then obviously we followed protocol and sent them on to Emil. So they have been looked at from a law standpoint. The same thing with the Police Budget Advisory Board, where Adam Blowers was very active with me in working on that as well. And obviously with the Police Budget Advisory Board, we also did provide communication to the chief, as the police department will be directly affected by the Police Budget Advisory Board and the Police Body Camera Policy Task Force. That policy has been shared that we currently have with everyone. The chief forwarded it to me and I forwarded it off to everyone. And so that is kind of where the Body Camera Policy Task Force would start with the current policy. But just know the current policy was taken from a multitude of police departments around our state, informed based on the findings of the police department at the time that it was formed, and to continue to keep in mind that obviously our police department is a nationally accredited agency. So our body camera policy that is in front of us to be reviewed is part of that accreditation of our police department as well at the present time. So we're just looking to obviously get feedback on these bylaws and clean them up or make any changes and then move them on so we can actually start doing something about them.
See Councilor Regan and Councilor Pruitt.
Yes, I certainly commend work going into something and volunteering for that. I want to step back for just a second. And we have done a lot of discussion about the majority here being kind of put aside in these initiatives. And in some ways, I feel that this was one of them. These were two past resolutions about policing that, one person who voted against it got the go ahead to start the bylaws, which is the beginning of organizing these two, bodies. So I found that a little. I would have preferred to see. Once someone had stepped forward, that maybe a committee was formed, a couple people helping on that. But at the same time for tonight, on the body camera law in particular, I think there was a misreading of what the intention was of the resolution. And this doesn't really hold true to the resolution. It says in the bylaws that this was written to keep with the stated purpose of the order, but in that order, it does say it's an effort to enhance police and public safety, public trust, and provide transparency. I think transparency is the word that was most important in crafting these original requests, and it's ignored in this completely. Instead, it goes on to say, determining that the goal here according to the bylaws, is to determine that we're consistent with national standards, best practice, and accreditation requirements applicable to the police department. I think those terms, except for the accreditation, that those aren't in the resolution at all, but the terms adhere to national standards and best practices, that those are stated in there, but it's a procedural thing. It's not, if I'd finish, please. That was a procedural statement that things would be written in aligned with those things. It wasn't the goal to make these. The goal here was to increase transparency. In particular, that it's ignored completely. The guidelines for our policy call for optional use, or what was being questioned in the resolution was guidelines that call for optional use, retention, storage, and access of body cameras and footage acquired by them. That's really, in my reading of it, what was being sought was a look at the optional use, because there are national practices that say best practice is to have the body camera on all the time and not have an optional policy. But more important to me is the whole retention, storage, and access of the footage in the camera. You've got to take a look at that as being something that this would allow. Again, these were presented. My reading is they were presented with the PAB in mind to help pave the way for the PAB, and you can't really have some of the goals going forward with the current policy, which says in bold and underlined, no citizens may look at body camera footage. So I guess my request would be that we kind of step back and get more people involved in forming the bylaws.
So, Council, are you offering any changes to this, or you want to scrap the whole thing? I'm just trying to get a feel for where you're coming from now.
Trying to unmute. Okay. Well, I would be willing to offer changes. I guess I know we're fighting time on many ends, but because of the meeting's length, and we've got a lot of really important things to discuss. Yep. I guess I would propose, that we take this away from this meeting and you work on it in a separate session.
And I'm not in disagreement with that. Councilor Pruitt, I believe you were somewhere, and then Councilor Cameron.
Can you hear me now? Good. I'm having a hard time shutting it off. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Good. First of all, I heard you say no one has stepped forward, and I know that when Councilor Noon had indicated he'd be willing to do this work, I myself, Laura, and Jan all said would like to be involved in the task force, and really that's something that I'm worried about. I'm not sure really if we're well organized on this sort of thing. As of July 2nd, I think what we should have done was said, here are the 6 items or 8 items that we have to go through. We're going to break up into task forces, subcommittees, whatever, And here's the people that are going to work on it and come back together in 2 weeks. We'll see where we stand. I have a lot of confidence actually in Councilor Noon's writing ability and also in the way I've seen him logically think through things. So I'm not taking issue with him doing this. I'm just thinking that really it should have been a little broader in terms of getting more of us involved. And as the mayor, you've got that ability to make assignments to us, and I was waiting for it all month. I kept thinking that there'd be some sort of organization, like a Gantt chart saying, here's what we have to do, here's going to do it, and here's when we get back together. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is not by virtue of complaint. As Councilor Burrell has said, whatever's happened has happened. Let's look forward. But we're starting over again with a new month, but we need to put some sort of order together in terms of who's working on what, when, and how we're coming back together to approve it or deny it. These very things we're talking about here. What's the next step in terms of approval or denial? Do we wait till the 31st, that meeting, and then there's a vote? So in other words, there should be better description for how we move forward and who's involved, I would think.
I'd be happy to apply that right after this discussion. Councilor Cameron?
Yes, the thing that I'm concerned about is this sort of convergence of a lot of people to work on this and everything else, but the direction that this particular document's going in is almost seems like it's going to do nothing. And I have a question, and I'm not sure who to direct it to except maybe the city manager, and that is, right now, how much body cam footage do we collect? Is it across the entire department or just a portion of the officers?
Every officer, everyone has a body camera assigned to them. So it's
okay. So then another question. So all that footage and everything else is warehoused after all the shifts, and it's in some kind of a storage place, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the thing is that all we have to do is really basically make that footage available to some police accountability board that we make, or to city council if we ask for it. My understanding is that we can ask for that information now as a city councilor under our charter. We have a right to ask for any of that information. But I think that we've already gone through an exercise where we had a thing before we couldn't meet in person anymore, where there was a request for body cam footage, and we ran through the motions and we figured some of that out. So administratively, have we found a way to make body cam footage available to people who may have a concern that aren't city council? We can ask for it because the city charter says we can ask for it. So, but are we trying to find something for the public to request it? How are we bringing this forward and making it available? Is that what this is about?
No, I think what I'm hearing from Councilor Regan is something more than that, and I really don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details. So far, I've got Councilor Noon, Councilor Pruitt, and Councilor Regan who are going to get together and work on this.
Yes, but what's the I think there's a lot of, what's the objective?
Let them come back and tell us what the objective is, based on the resolution that was passed and the groundwork that was done.
But wasn't the resolution that was passed to make, isn't the objective behind the resolution that we want to make body cam footage available for investigations and public review?
From what I just heard from Councilor Regan, it's more than that. It's also use, when it's used, when it's not used.
Well,
okay.
In other words, we're talking then about a restriction of when it can be used and when it can't be used.
Or maybe an opening up of.
Because
a change to the current policy is what's being talked about.
Oh, and what's the current policy?
I believe it's when the officers are out of the car.
No.
Councilor Salamanca.
In other words, the body cam is only on when they're out of the car. When they're in the car, it's turned off.
Without reading the policy completely, that's what I understand.
I would love if we're going to go into detail of the
Yeah.
policy so I don't misstep to have Chief Passalacqua here to
Yep.
be for another.
And that's why at this point, what I'd like to do is stop the discussion and ask Councilor Noon, Councilor Pruitt, and Councilor Regan to get together and work through really what the goals are and what we're trying to accomplish and come back to us. Okay?
Almendra also it has to be on that task force.
I think there's a conflict of interest there.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
I said, I believe there's a conflict of interest there. You will have an opportunity to say, but I believe there's a conflict of interest of you being on the body camera policy.
Ken, I will send you again the policy because I have it in my email, so I'll send it to you again.
You're muted, Councilor Cameron. You're muted, Councilor Cameron.
Saying you have the existing policy.
Correct, and I sent that out to everyone, and I will send it out again to you.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Okay.
Okay. So we probably should do the same thing with the Budget Advisory Board, I'm hearing. So based on, unless there's a different opinion, we want to talk about this. We want to do a small committee offline on the budget, on the Geneva Police Budget Advisory Board bylaws.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to be part of that. That's what you're asking, Mayor.
Yep, sure. Unmute and talk, please. Councilor Solomon.
Is it also a conflict of interest for me to sit on this one?
It's a good question because
I think that you're making a bold claim, Mr. Mayor, without, I mean, a conflict of interest. I'm a counselor, so you're saying that I can't participate and.
I'm willing to listen to the discussion. Okay. I think with the body camera policy being actual policy, I think there is a conflict of interest. As a Budget Advisory Board, I don't see it. So if you
I don't think that you're explaining that clearly enough.
Well, let me work on that. Councilor Regan, you were raising your hand?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying I'd be willing to work on that as well. The second committee there.
Councilor Cameron?
Mayor, can I say one thing?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
So I think one of the intents with the budget advisory was to be able to provide comment for the 2021 budget, and the way that the process works for establishing a board and doing bylaws and then having, if it merits appointments in council is arduous, but necessary if it's going to be a sustainable board. And so I just wanted to open up that anyone, counselors or community members that had particular things they wanted to provide to us to take into consideration for the 2021 budget. Adam, and please email to any of the counselors, but I would also really like to see it as well as Adam Blowers as well, because I do have a concern that the intent of what it was wanting to do and to get in motion quickly, to be able to have a long-standing committee that's a council board, it's a longer process.
Okay, Councilor Noon, and then I'm going to come back to you, Councilor Solomon. I'm sorry.
The counselors that you're calling on tonight, Mayor, are the ones who are going to meet to flush out the bylaws a little bit more, correct? Not
Yes. Yeah.
who are going to be assigned to actually serve the boards. Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make that clarity for everyone.
Councilor Salamandra, I will retract my conflict of interest comment, and I will definitely have you work together with the three other counselors, Regan, Pruitt, Noon, and yourself on the body camera policy. You have a comment? You're muted.
I know someone keeps muting and unmuting my computer screen, so I'm having some trouble accessing it. So please.
Okay.
I was offended by being told that it was a conflict of interest, while no one on this call seems to have specifics about the body camera footage that they find, including yourself. I do think it's a problem that the car stops are optional. I'm invested in this work. I do not understand why that would be said, and I'm glad to hear that you've changed your mind, but I'm not really sure where it came from. I think we have a serious issue here, so we can address it later, though. Thanks.
Thank you. So we're going, Councilor Camera.
First of all, who's the host that's muting and unmuting us?
Ken, it mutes everybody. If you mute yourself, the only person who can unmute is one of the hosts. Otherwise, anyone.
Who are the hosts?
Myself, the mayor, and Sage. But if we don't do it that way, anyone at any time can just chime in. We can't stop anybody from unmuting themselves. So that's why when you raise your hand, the mayor calls on you, then I unmute.
Okay, so the mayor you've decided that you haven't explained the conflict of interest for body cams that Laura has?
No, I just retracted that.
Okay.
She's going to be working together with them.
Okay.
Now we're on to the Budget Advisory Board, and I've got Councilor Pruitt, Councilor Noon, and I know Adam's in the mix. Was there Councilor Regan? Okay. Thank you very much for your volunteering. We have Councilor Regan, Councilor Noon, and Councilor Pruitt. Okay, in the sake of time, we're going to move on to the next resolution. The next resolution is a resolution designating this, tabled resolution. So again, we're going to have to bring this back up. This is about the terminating of the marina project. Councilor Camera, this is your resolution that was tabled, and in order to put it back on the agenda, we need a motion and a second. I have a motion from Councilor Salamandra and a second from Councilor Camera.
Okay, so should I just start talking?
Yes, now that it's back on the table, yes. So you present it the way you would as if it was a new resolution, and then we need a motion and a second to have discussion.
Okay. I want to thank staff for sending us the snapshot of the cost. If the proposal here is, or the resolution is to cancel the marina project, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for doing that, and we've reviewed those before, but I'll try to just kind of work through them as efficiently as possible. But we've got a report from a avid boater who sails in the north end of Seneca Lake and moors his craft at the Seneca Lake State Park, and who is intimately familiar with the choices that are up there, and who has basically explained that there's overcapacity right now available at Seneca Lake Park Marina, which is by the middle of the summer is usually not full, and they actually cut rates to do that, to encourage more dockage and business. And then there's the two commercial marinas as well over on the other side of the lake. The memo that he
Councilor Camera, stop. I didn't mute you. I'm not sure what happened, but
I don't know what happened. Everybody just went on mute.
You're muted. This is some of the challenges of Zoom, so don't take it personally, please.
Okay, so you're able to unmute yourself at this point.
Yeah, each counselor can mute and unmute themselves, so just kind of look at the screen if you can.
Okay. There's a feasibility study called the Edgewater Proposal, and it proposed this project. And I think that the most important thing for us to look at is the cost. We have sunk costs in the project. There's been design and other development information developed, and there's been grants that have been secured in order to fund this project. The total project cost is somewhere in the area of $3 million plus. We haven't spent, and this is where maybe Adam can help me, but I think we've spent less than $1 million of those funds at this point. If we were to move forward, so in economics, you always make the investment decision at the margin, and you make an assessment of whether the new costs that you're willing to spend will justify the benefits or the revenue that you're going to get. And in this particular case, if we move forward at this point, the project will, if we terminate the project at this point, we will save roughly $100,000 a year for the duration of the bond, which I've been told is something like 10, 11, or 12 years. It's $100,000 a year. Plus, we'll save also on interest costs that might amount to as much as $350,000. Now, if we were going to pay off that $100,000, not the original investment, which would probably be more than $100,000 a year, if you take that amount and you divide it by what the Edgewater Resources proposal suggests is the revenue that we can get per lineal foot, which is $65 to $70 per foot, which is more than what the Seneca Lake Park Marina asks. It boils down to we can bill it 50 30-foot long boats. We need 50 30-foot long boats to generate $100,000 of revenue to pay the debt service on this marina. So that leaves nothing for maintenance, nothing for the amenities that would possibly have to be maintained, dredging or any of that upkeep. So we're proposing a more expensive facility to billet your boat than the other available facilities. And we're thinking that all these people are going to rush into Geneva and pay and buy enough dinners that what we'll recover in the sales tax on what they spend in the retail downtown businesses is going to compensate. It's a daydream. And it's almost like saying, they're having a sale at Lowe's on drywall, and it's 50% off. And I have no need for the drywall, but hell, it's a bargain I can't pass up. This is crazy. Now, there's a few other things about this. Think about what we've already got. We have we have two piers right now, which are very scruffy, that together we can tie, I think it's 24 transient. They're 24 transient docks, or they can support 24 tie-ups. They are in bad shape, so we have to give them that excuse. Maybe that's why nobody ties up to them. I could take pictures every day this summer, and usually there's only one or two boats there. And then we have a boat launch that recently was shown to us to be inadequate. It's difficult, it's unmaintained, it's almost a cesspool of oil. It's full of weeds. There are no wash stations to wash the boats off. So it's a boat launch that is bereft of amenities. So we're basically, our presentation to Seneca Lake is scruffy at best. And we want to build a marina, and a lot of people say, well, it's just going to be fantastic. That can't support itself. It won't take long for it to be scruffy. The last thing I want to say is that anybody can, if you want to bring people to Geneva, think of an alternative. I mean, if you put a huge world, a water spout on the scale of the city of Geneva, Switzerland, which might be 200 or 300 feet high. To see it, some people will come by boat, but a lot of people will come to the downtown Geneva and out to the park, and they'll look at it from the lake, from the lakeside. They will look at that and they will spend money because they're already on foot. They don't have to worry about parking a boat. They park their car. They've driven through Geneva to get to the lake. That is a better investment, and it'll be much more attractive. And we've got, and so that's something I think if you want to think about alternatives and a lot less to maintain. Although we're challenged right now because we're having trouble maintaining a pump at Pulteney Park. The thing I think we should do is we should cancel. And I don't appreciate the fact that, that I feel that staff, since I brought this up, has never brought the information together to make this decision. I've been always operating under the premise that it's less, that we would save less than what we have. Staff finally did it. They could have done it a year ago. They could have done it 2 years ago. They could have challenged this memo that was written by a Geneva resident who is an expert, who's in the tourist business. It's very well done. None of that work was done. So I feel that staff did not provide the information in a timely way and actually obstructed bringing this proposal today. And I'm very disappointed, and I urge that we pass this. Last thing, we're in a crisis. We're in a budget crisis. We're really going to go build something that we can't maintain and start spending $100,000 a year when our city is going to be underwater soon financially. Doesn't make sense. I urge we pass it. I hope we pass it unanimously.
Well, we can't pass it until we get on the table. So I need a motion and a second, please.
I'm
got a motion from Salamandra. I have a second from Councilor Cameron. Now we can do discussion because the presentation was lengthy. Councilor Peeler, Councilor Regan, Councilor Pruitt.
I think this discussion is a bit strange. We are craving economic development. Economic development was at the top of our list during our retreat. It was something that we're talking about hiring a full-time, well-paid staff member to do. And now we're all talking about it and thinking it's a bad idea and ignoring the fact that you have to invest to get some economic development. Am I in absolute agreement of this of the design of the marina? I think it can be tweaked. Listen, I think things can be tweaked. That's what, I'm a new counselor and this is an old project. I have an opinion on the project. But this has been going on for a long time, and for over 15, 20 years, Geneva's been trying to produce a marina in this spot. I think we should, I'm voting this down. This doesn't make sense. We've got a city manager who's just short of brilliant. She recommended that we move forward with it. I'm confused why this is even on the agenda. We need economic development. Is anyone here even a boater? I am. And there is a shortage of slips and hoists in our region, especially on the north end. So I am not for this. I think it is going to bring opportunities into Geneva. And Ken, you brought up one person that had a negative point of view, and you completely disregarded that we today received other point of views that said it was a brilliant idea. So I find that bizarre that you're not having an even-handed approach to this. So we should really listen to not only this is a bit of a betrayal on the public from before. This was part of a survey. This is part of our comprehensive plan. This is part of the Edgewater study. This is part of so many things that we need to do. And to have a lakefront with no marina for our city on a canal system on the beautiful Seneca Lake that's going to be a beautiful marina, it's very strange. So I've said my piece. I'd like to see the marina go forward. I hope there's opportunities to discuss the design. There are a few things in the Edgewater study that I think we should talk about later as far as their recommendations that I'm not sure if we're technically following. But this specific resolution, I'm not for it at all.
Councilor Regan and then Councilor Pruitt.
The project seems to me is kind of a, if we build it, they will come project. I mean, I think it was put together with all good intention. And I have to say, I was a believer in that. I'm still, a little bit on the fence over the whole thing. But I have gone to other lakes and been on somebody's boat and done this stop and shop and have lunch but my understanding, first of all, these are permanent slips. They're not transient that we're building. I'm going to ask a few questions, I guess. That's a little different considering, it's not, I don't know. I don't see the, to pay more here for that seems, I know. Let me ask a couple questions, please. So that's one. Second, I am curious about how much tweaking is possible. A lot of ideas have come forward, even the idea of kayaks, a kayak marina kind of thing. I think we also do have to be realistic about the plan for maintenance on this. We've had lots of complaints about the way the temporary, the transient slips are cared for now, and this would all be on our staff, from my understanding, if that could be clarified as well. I guess that's it, especially whether there is any way to make some adjustments to that to make it feel more, like something we can be more sure people will come. If we build it, they will come.
So staff, would you like to answer any of those?
Sure. And it might be helpful. I prepared a visual, Ken. It's not there yet. It's way too much narrative. Councilor Cameron had asked that we try to do more visuals that are not auditory or narrative. And I took that seriously, as I too like to do diagrams for myself. But to answer first, and if I can screen share, I will. It's going to be both transient and seasonal. Some of our grants are dependent on both. It is the schematic design is there what they're working from, and that was a lot of community input. But there will be another community session, and anyone that wants, we can get a deeper dive to. Kayaks did come up, and they're as something that would be important to have as rentals or launch pad there, and that, to my understanding, is going to be incorporated. We're looking at the operation of it is not necessarily going to be city driven. It could be also a private operation. We're looking at both. We have a model now that the state parks is using with Sampson. They're operating 2 marinas, the one down in Sampson State Park and our state park, privately managed, but a relationship or contract with the state park. So it's something that should be considered as an option and weighed. The maintenance materials will be better than how our docks are built today, but as everything, it does come along with maintenance, and we do have a culture here of not necessarily being able to fully support that culture, but funding wise limits our ability to keep up with what we've been putting in infrastructure, and we all have seen it and been doing different ways to try and solve that issue. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share if that's all right. I'm not sure. Looking for my, all right. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
So just
We'll see
provide,
Zoom.
do you see my screen?
Nope. All it says is Zoom on my screen.
Same with everyone? Okay. New share. If not, I'll talk. Oh, I think. Got it. Is that better?
That's better.
Great. All right. So just a couple of information that had been asked, and one of the reasons it was tabled, we had one of our employees that were on the voluntary furlough that had some of this information. So we have it here. I wanted just to note the studies leading up to this. And I only went back to 1997 and some of the history of that. I kind of jumped on board to start helping with this in 2012. Grant funded to kind of get through the feasibility study